The circle closes, the end begins is a thing that happens a lot. I'm trying to find ways to incorporate the word finale into an intro, and it doesn't always kind of work, but we've already started. The beginning of the end has already occurred, and now we're just moving through the rest of the tournament. It's XGS and TPL, the finale. We're on what, day 2, day 3, day 17? We'll find out at some point. I'm Jacob, and this is Chaka. We are in the middle of what's about to be a ridiculous group stage. Some teams have already played some games, some teams are about to go through and play their first matchups, but we're right smack in the middle of more T3 action, so it's about to be a fun day.
Yeah, like you said, today, and that includes the first games that we're going to be covering the game. Actually, the first game that me and you are covering today between Underagers and the Freezers. You have Shubes at the top of the table after they just beat the Freezers. I think it was, don't remind me, either Wednesday. It was Wednesday that we had the very first day of the finale in the XGS division. And then the second day, it was the TPL division where we saw the Jinxie's Loyals snatch a dominant win over the Yonks on the first day to make it top of the table over Carnico, who won a game just before the Jinxie's Loyals came in, but not as dominant as Jinxie's Loyals against the Unks. So pretty solid opening day for some of the teams who won, and then pretty disappointing first day for those who lost.
There's a couple teams that still have a game they need to play their first time out. No Name's Way, Outlast Black, Revelations have all not played their first matchup yet, and we are fixing that problem for Underagers because now they're coming in and playing one of the only teams, in fact, the only team that had any shot at beating them in qualifiers was the Freezer. So the matchup that we have on deck for today is the one time where Underagers so far, when they've played with Kaysen, have shown really any sign of weakness. The only time that they've lost maps was against the Freezer. The only time that Freezer really looked dominant was in that first qualifier because that was the only qualifier they had to play in order to get here in the first place. The matchup on paper to me looks pretty interesting, and if what the Underagers are capable of is actually what it's, everyone hypes it up a lot, but if they were to come in and actually prove that they can play at that level consistently, then we might be looking at some of the next guys up.
Yeah, and you know, when I look at the Underagers run, especially in the second qualifiers, that one had better teams in it, if I'm being honest, just because more teams participated. I think it was, Forsaken? Not the same team that participated in the Challenger Series, but pretty damn close to being just as good. And they were completely dominant in their qualifier number 2 run after getting knocked out of qualifier number 1 by the Freezer. So they come into this an improved team compared to how they played in the first qualifier. And some of these players, they sure as hell stack up in gunpowder, which is what most T3 teams and T2 teams depend on nowadays.
Soapy and Scary have been teaming together for most of 2025 so far. They've been with Lucky since February, back when they were known as Shubes Academy. I think one of the big stories for me is just the amount that Kaysen's been hyped up over the past couple months, honestly. The amount that he's generated over his time as a console player, now switching over to PC. He's only played in PC qualifiers up to this point in just TPL XGS. He was just in the finale. So my understanding is that for all the time he's spent on console, all the time he's been playing Rainbow Six at just 16 years old, he's a guy I've seen plenty of people within the console community just not be able to shut up about, for lack of a better term. So whether his skill can translate to PC is still something we're figuring out, but the fact that they went through both of their qualifiers only losing 2 maps and going on a perfect run in qualifier 2, it's a pretty good sign that Kaysen and this squad, they should be able to go on a run in the main tournament now as well.
Yeah, Kaysen has the same amount of hype around him as maybe like Stompin'. They both come from console with a large community behind them. But I really want to talk about the Freezer because we did spend a lot of time talking about the Underagers and hyping them up. And I said they were a really good team in qualifier number 2. The Freezer didn't have to do another qualifier because they just went straight forward and dominated everybody in their way, including the Underagers, who they took into a 3-map series and beat them just to make it here. You have Arc, Frozen, Raki, Valeno, and Zez on this team. Valeno I'm very familiar with. He formerly used to play on SSG ACAT a while back. He's a really good, a really solid, aggressive player, and Frozen has been on T2 teams in the past. He played in the Challenger League when it was still like a thing. So you have some good experience on this team with good gunners right behind him.
A lot of time for the Freezer was I think it was interesting how they played against Shubes, and they played them just back on Wednesday, and it was a 2-0 loss. It was 5-7 on Chalet, 2-7 on Bank, and in both cases on Chalet, both halves, they got out to an early lead. There was an advantage. They looked like suddenly Space Shubes were all out of sorts, and then they just got adapted against very quickly. For Freezer, on the first half, it was 2-0, and then they won 3 straight after the side swap, and then Shubes found some other way to counter them. It was mostly just when you don't ban shields on Chalet and everyone plays shields, it's about to turn into an absolute mad fest. But for what the Freezer were able to do on Chalet, it kept it close. Then they went to Bank, a map that they were super comfortable with, and lost it 2-7. So if they want to try Bank again against a team like Underagers that maybe has a little less structure, then maybe there's an opportunity for them to get that Bank win streak back on track, but it's going to be a little bit different here. We'll get the vetoes in. There are some maps that both teams need to be aware of. For the Freezer, they pick it. They're undefeated through their qualifier run. They were 3-0. They have yet to lose it. And the Underagers played it once, but it was not one of their preferred maps because they went and played maps like Labs and Lair and Consulate over and over again. But the big question for me is Chalet. 10-0 on Chalet through both qualifiers with this primary 4 stack, even if they had to get one player to sub in on both qualifiers, and it was a bit different every time. They have yet to lose Chalet, and they are on a double-digit run on that map right now, which is pretty insane.
Yeah, when you mention the stats for Chalet, this may seem like a very funny map veto from the Freezer, but with the Lair and Consulate being out, those are 2 permabans for the Freezer, so I'm not too surprised to see those go out and see them end up on a map like Chalet. But with such a limited map pool, you go onto a very strong map for the Underagers, which is Chalet, and they lost this map against the Shubes 7-5 on the very first day. So I wonder how that map is going to look for the Freezer, especially if they lose Border, because Border is supposed to be like their favorite map pick. They went like, I think 3-0 in qualifier number 1 on Border, so 3-0. Like they did not drop that map. But going up against a really aggressive team like Underagers, they're sure as hell they're going to be very competitive on Border, just like how they are going to be on Chalet. So I think the Freezer, if they want to have a chance to actually win this series, they have to win Border, because it's clear to me that the Underagers are super good on Chalet.
The big thing for me is Underagers have had guys who've played on practically every tier 3 league that there is that doesn't have an age restriction. It's been TPS, Outlast, AEL, Blitz, Wargame, Shockpoint, Mukbang. They've got guys who've been around the block, but there is talent in spades within tier 3 and the lower echelon of tier 2, but talent really only gets you so far. So the big question for Underagers will be how that translates when they're facing a team that has had to be in more structured environments before. Like you mentioned, Frozen's had to play in circumstances in Challenger where there have been teams, even if they maybe didn't go as far as they wanted to, he still made top 4 in Challenger at one point, even if it was a long time ago. And the way that you got there usually wasn't by being hyper aggressive all the time. So the Underagers are coming in, and the gun skill is obviously there, but even if a team like Freezer haven't been together for very long, there's still something about the way that they play that maybe gives them a little more of a competitive edge because they're thinking more about just the gun skill.
Looking back on the Freezer's game against Space Shubes Wednesday, I just remember them having, like, they did really well with their own aggression against the Shubes and caught them off a little bit. Valena was having, like, a really good couple of opening rounds against them. And then once the Space Shubes started to, like, reorganize themselves and, like, be aggressive themselves was when the Freezers started to really, like, they started to, like, really surrender the first map, which was Chalet. And then Consulate was just, like, a complete mull over from Space Shubes. So hopefully, like, if the Freezer do play really aggressive today, depending on however they play, they don't really drop the mentals today, because that's kind of what seemed like happened against the Space Shubes when they played against them the first time. They just couldn't really recover after they started to lose like a host of rounds in a row.
Still getting used to this ban, because we're not going to see this graphic for all that much longer, given what we've seen in Siege X so far. So take it in, everybody. This might be one of the last times you end up seeing what this phase looks like. We'll probably get, I think, they're looking at about 3 weeks of test server for Siege X, so we're probably still maybe 3 weeks to a month away from the update getting implemented. It's like first week June is my understanding, so about 3 weeks. So take a look at what a ban phase looks like when you can't change it after you've already set it for the first half, or for the first map rather. So 2 shields off the board, not surprising, and then Valkyrie and Azami honestly just make all too much sense. So the only shield operator still left up for the attack is Monty, who still has a pretty high ban rate here. It will leave plenty of other options on the board. You're never going to ban up options like a Mute or an Ace or a Legion, so there's still tons of utility potential that you can use on both attack and defense here. But I think Freezer understood one big problem from their first series is that if we leave all of the shields up, then we may not actually have a counter for it. Even if Underagers and Space Shoops play in two very different ways, I think it makes just too much sense to make sure that two shield ops are gone. So if the Underagers want to move in really quickly when we swap sides, it's going to have to come through a form that probably isn't shield aggression, at least initially.
Yeah, and thinking about the Azami getting banned out by the Underagers is the fact that, like, now East stairs holds are going to be a lot weaker. You can still play the smoke there, for example, but like without the smoke being present in the lineup for the Underagers, they have considerably less stall utility. Now that the Azami is gone, no smoke present in this lineup. You still have things like the Legion, as well as the Fenrir too, so you have traps to play around in order to slow down the takeover by East. But I like the thinking here from the Underagers. They really want to focus on this east-sided take now that Azami is gone. It's going to be a lot easier and a lot quicker to take without that amount of utility to get through.
Freezer have opted for 3 ops to ensure, actually, you could really call it 4, all situated around roam clearing. It's 4 guys who are intent on ensuring that they get offsite positions cleared quickly, and then Zez, who just has an ace, which at this point almost feels like, you know what, we'll just make sure that we have a hard breacher at some point. Impact comes in, trying to get the first frag, but Raki sees it immediately. Adept tries to get cute, trying to come right in, but instead, he gets hard countered. Raki gets the first kill, and Underagers on this roam. So far, it's not working out too well.
That was the only roamer that the Underagers did have, so they removed the blitz. And they can take East stairs really quickly at this point and start putting pressure onto Soapy, who's in the coffin position. You still have some, now that they're taking East, the ace is just outside the radio window, for example, and you can start to open up the archives wall in order to initiate a site execute. You have considerably less people on this side of the map is the point, and now Soapy is just is outnumbered with no fountain player there. Yeah, Wailicki can rotate at any time, but he's just pinned in here.
Just more about the intel game. They have at least some idea of where the Fenrir sits, and Raki will just hop in again. There's kind of nothing you can do against both a Grim and a Dokkaebi all at the same time, so they've basically got Office all to themselves, even without having to worry about a breach. But there is an angle being held from Kaysen. Does he have a really long one? He does. Raki falls, so 2 kills, but he's done most of his work here. But Lecky can move in and mostly take Office control, but he might get swarmed from both sides. Kaysen needs to make sure that he keeps on holding his backside while he holds on to Fountain for dear life.
Need the security player to stand strong here because he can be the difference maker in denying the Office push. You also still have the Mirror up who's in front of an open breach and still stands strong. Kaysen finds another in break room to make the min advantage in favor of the Freezer, but Arc strikes back. It's a 2v2, but this was once an advantage for the Freezer with full East control and a roamer down on the bottom floor, and now they've just surrendered a man advantage.
Arc was on a tear last time they played a couple days ago, and he's just looking to continue the same streak with 30 seconds left. Scary doesn't have a Nitro, and he'll probably just need to reposition, but that's the problem when you leave all this roam clear utility still up. You know exactly where he is, but Arc gets taken down. Suddenly, it's just a Vector against a pistol, but Valeno knows exactly where he is, and ultimately, the intel is going to win out. Gun skill be damned. If you know exactly where you're at, all you have to do is just hit him a couple times, and that's exactly how Freezer are going to open up border.
Playing around a host of information, the Freezer did that really well to play effectively around that information. First, getting the opening kill on the bottom floor that allowed them to take East very quickly, and because they also had radio window like wide open and the Fountain player kind of like preoccupied somewhere else, they were able to just jump in and kill the radio player too. Yeah, like there was a chance in the round for the Underagers to get back into it, but ultimately, like that kill from Arc really opened up the possibility for the Freezer to like take the round in their favor, because once he killed the break room player, now Office is free, now the long hallway is free, and they can just isolate the Mirror. It didn't work out quite that way, but I really like the thinking from the Freezer there to just effectively work around their information.
I also don't mind Adapt being cute, impacting through Passport, trying to get that first frag But ultimately, because things came down to just one player being left alive, it does beg the question, if that roam was able to stall for even if 30 more seconds, because as soon as Dokkaebi got the passport frag, suddenly she's upstairs and can work over Office very, very quickly. So if Adept just survived for just a little bit longer, then maybe it forces Freezer into a bad spot, but they have just enough time to make sure that they get in position, they win the 1v1, and they're all set for round 2. So, small things for Underagers, but obviously the gun skill's there, and the CC hold from Kaysen was really good. So, it's only one round. We'll see how the rest of the game plays out before we start getting too deep into the opinions weeds here.
We'll say, I mean, maybe you listen because there's like no roam anymore around the first floor.
Yeah,
the freezer,
there's nothing.
yeah, like the freezer just like completely like smoked this guy. It wasn't even just the freezer, it was just the Dokkaebi. So there's no more first floor roam. They're playing around a lot more stall util. The Goyo is present in this lineup as well as the Melusi. So they're looking to really slow down the freezer here and how much map control that they can take around the site.
It's also not immediately more office-oriented. They swapped off Grim, gave Arc a fragger instead, so roles have been switched around just a tad bit. Oh, Lucky does get down from the outside. Arc just opens up the same way he did in the last round. So Adept is going to hold on to CC for all he's worth, and he's the only one over here. He's got Kaysen who can make the rotate and give him a little bit of help from the window. Freezer also haven't opened up CC from that angle quite yet. Instead, they're opting to just make sure no one sticks around and break. They want Adept first, and Adept knows it. He'll retreat, head back into Office, keep his balcony check, but he makes it all the way back to Fountain totally unscathed, so that's a really good rotate for Underagers on defense.
I did see the freezer have a drone on top east, so I wonder if they did spot that rotation, and now they may know that the player in security is very much isolated by himself. And so that means they could probably just take security for free by this point. But what is a fact is the fact that the freezer get top east control again. That'll allow them to like now put pressure into Offices, for example. And Soapy's putting himself in a really aggressive position in order to try and like stall this out a little bit more because they've been stalling out for time really good.
Flashbang for Raki. He'll get the exact same kill he had in round 1 from the exact same spot. Soapy falls, but there is still a crossback. Scary with a double nitro, though. It evens us back up. Soapy might not be retrievable, but instead, Underagers are now just piling on out of nowhere. Adept is held onto that position, and it's worked great. So now Arc has to come into 90 and make something happen. He'll take down one, but there's the cross, and Frozen's not dead. So this is absolutely still doable from the freezer at 30 seconds to go. Scary in the same spot. He has to now win a 1vx all the way at the tail end of the round, but Freezer gets super lucky with their trades. The timing is just better, and Underagers lose 2 in a row.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised that Arc was allowed to like walk up 90 like that, like for free. There was a player in Fountain. The shield was blocking his rotate, so he wasn't necessarily looking towards the 90 hall. Anyways, he was looking towards triple wall, which is where the main attack from the freezer was coming from. It looked like Underagers had a chance to stop that whole take in from Offices, which gave them a host of troubles in the previous round. But they just couldn't really stop the lurk plays from happening into 90 because, like, well, no one was there, and they also have, like, no information in 90 neither from what I saw.
Felt like it was a better idea to try and stall for time on site as long as possible, or just having the extension into CC be the primary place where they're going to put bodies and they're going to force Freezer to come to them at that side. But again, for Underagers, it's probably just a timing thing. Realizing, okay, the roam's not going to work, so let's consolidate more bodies on the top floor. Okay, well, top floor defense didn't work out nearly as much, so let's switch up sites and try something different. I would be a little bit concerned if we saw Underagers try to defend top floor for 3 rounds in a row, thinking, no, we can just keep on making minute adjustments and try something different. Probably not against Freezer, who so far, not just because Arc has 6 kills through 2 rounds, they're doing a much better job isolating one player at a time and ensuring that Underagers really don't have an answer. And when they do, the freezer can just overwhelm them or get that last trade that gives them the man advantage and puts Underagers in a really bad spot.
I've also been able to find like some really like weird gaps that are super effective against the Underagers when it comes to just like tearing open the site and finding these isolated kills too. And the information game, I don't think I need to comment on it very much, but the information game for the freezer compared to the Underagers, yes, Valkyrie is banned, but you still have Legion, you have Melusi, you have Fenrir present, which they've been playing in the last 3 rounds. Hasn't really been that effective against the freezer, to be fair. And now the freezer are going to start off with an office take yet again on the top floor.
Kaysen takes some damage and he'll work back immediately. Adept gets found by Deimos, but the Flores is also in play, presumably to nullify batteries as fast as possible. Lucky, 2 fast kills. Looks into office and just gets 2 heads immediately, and he hasn't even had to worry about leaving archives quite yet. So now Freezer, are they just going to keep taking the 1v1s? There's 2 MP7 crossfires in the doorway. Zez will just keep on inching around it, but he'll wait for Valeno to get back to the doorway, but Lecky just swings again and gets his 3rd, even before the window pressure comes back in. And suddenly the Freezer are all out of sorts. They've got half the round to go, but everyone on Underagers is still alive, and that's a big problem.
Yeah, I can't believe he just spoke 3 people like that. And no walls were opened by the Freezer, neither, because it was the Bandit that's available here for Adept, and it's blocking off their archives wall, so they can't even breach open the wall to apply pressure onto the defender who's sitting here. So this top 4 clear, well, it's a complete disaster, and Valeno's the last one left to try and pick up the pieces.
I've seen clutches, but I'm not about to get my hopes up on something like this. Border relies on you getting into the building to win games. I mean, that's true for any map, but I think for Border, on defense, if you don't even let them get in the building for half the round, then that's going to be a huge problem. Lecky just makes it 4. It's a flawless for Underagers, the first way they win their defense. It's off a hero play and really good positioning from Lecky. He just hits his shots, and there's not much else about the round that I think needs to be said. You can try to break it down, but ultimately Lecky just had the perfect spot at the perfect moment, fires through the door, and Freezer couldn't do anything about it.
Yeah, like I said, the archives wall was also banded. I don't think the Freezer had any counters to that, so their entry points were very limited, and they were forced to just like one little arcway. Okay, yeah, they had nades. So they had utility to deal with the bandit batteries, but they just never got into position to use them. So yeah, I mean, that's just a very good like round for Waileki. A good confidence booster just because of how nasty the shots were. And the Freezer just never could adapt because it couldn't hit their shots back. It's just tough.
Taking a Mira, taking a Boss G. All right, Kaysen. All right, man. For a guy that I've heard in the midst of, hey, Stompin's turned 18, sweet, he might go pro. Enough people were talking about Kaysen might be the next guy to do it, but he's got about 2 years to incubate. Played a whole bunch of console tournaments, looking for an opportunity to jump onto a squad, and he's done it with this Underagers team. On a PC level, to see him make it into a tier 3 competition is exciting. It's exciting for any console convert when they're able to make it into a league relatively quickly without needing to... I mean, the game sense cop is over, but the mechanical skill and finding the right squad is ultimately the thing that becomes the biggest hang-up. Underagers only lost 2 maps and 2 qualifiers in order to get here, and already Kaysen's made it into a league pretty quickly. But again, the one team that they did lose to, the only time they lost a series or maps in general over the past 2 weeks with this lineup, was against the Freezer, even if the maps are a bit different. There's the Boss G attempt. Arc takes his head off. Only one, I mean, what, he might have been like 2 pixels off his head. He was so close. Underagers gave it a try, and again, that Vigil Roam ends up being the first guy to die on defense for the Underagers.
I thought somebody initially rotated back to site, but now that they just killed, like, Kaysen here, that was the only player that was kind of, like, supporting Soapy all the way over here by offices, and they kind of, like, recognize this. Again, good information from the Freezer, and they're just going to breach into offices from Courtyard. Scary has retaken a position into Customs, but, like, this wall isn't open. They have no head holes there.
It's going to be a problem because Monty's already moved in.
Yeah.
Frozen also has Case, so he might be, like... a moment where he just puts his back with the shield all the way to where they've already breached and just tries to plant it. Like he does have this position top east. I don't think Ace has any idea. So it's just a roaming vector. You like to see this all the way from balcony side. He's got one, but now they know the roam is in that direction. He might even be able to shoot Monty in the back of the head. He'll go prone, but finally there is the coverage. And now the Freezer can move in and try to plant diffuser almost unobstructed here.
Yeah, but there's 2 people retaking in from break room. There goes a good refrag from Raki, but you still have Scary to worry about. And he's face to face with the Monty, of course. He does have a nitro cell, so he can use it in this case. But him retaining his position in offices, I think Freezer could like just go for a plant here through Courtyard. They still have to watch out for Scary though on top east, because if like they walk in to offices with their back turned to him, he can get an easy kill onto the Monty.
Underagers still have 2 nitro cells, and they're doing a good job of staying fluid, but it's 2 guys who are completely isolated from one another. They can't help it. Now Monty's already found Soapy. He'll move right in and take that down, so it's just Bandit up on a balcony. He's got a nitro, but at this point, it's not even going to matter. You either jump down the balcony or come down the stairs. Racky's already got the idea right as the plant's coming down, and the Freezer have now opened up. There's a reason they were undefeated on border through the first qualifier, and right now I think we're seeing why.
You're just reading Underagers like a book. I mean, like a 3v2 in that situation, they play it like very smart. They don't go for an office default plant, which is the smart move. They recognize that because the Bandit is on top east by that point in the round, that really the only player that they need to worry about is a player that they already knew was in sight anyways, which was Soapy, who was in sight in bathroom the whole entire round. So they just used the Monty to isolate him, and somebody swung around from the bathroom doorway. Racky did, and just smoked him because he's just really distracted by the Monty. Even though he has a nitro cell, he has utility to use. He can't use it in time. He's gonna die either way. And so again, it just seems like the Freezer, like besides the flank that happened on the second floor against Arc, they've been like smoking Underagers in the information game, and they've been able to read them so well, like it's insane.
Freezer have been progressively taking less and less intel ops, though. They went from 4, if you count Nomad as an intel op, in the first round, down to what is just 2. Though, might be a switch. Nope, they went from 2 and then repicked back into still 2 more. So Arc will keep the 4-7, or someone has to keep the 417. Bracket was using it to full effect last time. Valeno not high in the kill department, so they'll give him the Deimos just to deliver intel back to the teammates, and Frozen might still be using Grim if they want to flesh out, or, I mean, force out an ops position. They've got the ability to. Their timing's been great so far, and it is highlighting why the Valk ban has been such a big problem for Underagers. There's no counter intel, or no intel that will work in Underagers' favor. The only thing that they've got going for them is a mute who can help to stall out drones for a hot second, but as far as Underagers is concerned, they don't have... The only answer that they might have to intel game is just trying to play offside positions, and Freezer have been doing a really good job of sniffing those out so far.
They've also been really good at, like, finding, like, opening picks, too. So, and, like, converting the rounds they've been getting the opening picks. So, like, I hope that the Underagers can find a way to shut it down. Okay, that's a good start, because Scary has taken down the Grim over by Armory, or Armory Balcony, and that's a good piece of information to take off of the board here for the Freezer.
Stall him for just a little bit more time. Case in top metal. Suddenly Deimos is gone. Both of the intel operators are already removed from the field. And so now it just comes down to gunfights because Freezer has stalled outside. Underagers killed both players who had managed to make their way into the building as Freezer attempted to get a foothold, and there's kind of nothing else left for them. So Adapt now can hold on to break room pretty comfortably unless Freezer were to gang up on him and just make sure that even if they were to kill one player, there's going to be somebody from Underagers that has a good cross angle here. So we'll see how Freezer react.
Yeah, there's a player on top east who could always rotate to the balcony, but he gets smoked by Arc as soon as he does so. And now they're just going to try and like break into break room, but Kaysen finds another. That's a player over by Fountain. Racky's dead, so that's the Ying. And there's a player on the flank that Arc just doesn't know about. So now it's Zez in a 1v4 with Diffuser in hand. And with 2 nitro cells left on the board, he's not going to get a plant down. Okay, well.
Nobody else in the mirror window. So Armory is open even if he's not completely aware of it. I don't really know how much I would want to peek the mirror window either, but it would be weird to assume that there were 2 players on it, so he's probably fine assuming that he can just peek it for essentially for free. There's also a camera back on him through the rotate, so they know exactly where he's at. So Kaysen and Adept don't even have to do anything crazy. They've all come back to site. They know how they want to play this one, and Intel has also revealed that he's back at 90. And at this point, he's just using Selmas to get rid of BPs. So that plus Mira, there's a little bit more of that counter intel. So the mute stalls out drones for just long enough, and then Mira Window also relays enough intel for them to get swings onto the balcony to kill Frozen very quickly. They know exactly where the last player is because they've put this other one up watching into Fountain. So not a bad adaptation for Underagers, but still, Freezer have a lead here.
Yeah. I think one thing that we kind of neglected to say is the fact that, like, the Freezer are on the attack side of Border. Border tends to be more attacker favored anyways, just because of, like, it's like Chalet, but like a way smaller. Like there's not many places to play safe in just because of the amount of windows that can like really cut the whole entire map in half. You open one wall and now you have like site control. Border is just like extremely attacker sided, and it's no surprise to me that the underagers kind of like seem like they're being suffocated when they are on these extensive defensive holes, just because of how the map plays out usually anyways. Freezer though will be playing their last round on the attack, and they will be bringing a lot of information up. They swapped the Bravo for a Twitch, but that's still utility that you can use to like clear utility on the underager side. You have Nomad for flank watch. Dokebee's been switched off for the Buck for more verticality control for the Freezer. Like this seems like a pretty default lineup, all things considered. Hard breach, soft breach. Yeah.
Soapy's not found the scoreboard much, but he might be the win condition on Events Plant if you were to stay alive for as long as possible. But we'll see how aggressive the roam gets, or if he's got someone buddied up with him. Instead, opting to just push windows by himself. All right, go off. You think you have an angle with a P90 from long range? Let's see what you can do, tough guy. But again, probably needing to use the Solus in the event that a plant were to go down is the kind of utility you want to preserve, like an Echo in a post-plant situation. So get a little aggressive, fall back to just the immediate vertical, not so far away that he's not able to help out here. But there is enough denial utility from underagers that Freezer don't have the ability to just push right in and try to get a quick plant down, and they've obviously opted not to go for a fast smoke plant or anything. They like their clear, they know they're going to use vertical. What? Vel is dead from main door?
Oh, what the heck?
And the smoke is gonna... Wow. Yeah, no, I would probably lull at that too. But honestly, you spend one Toxic Babe to get one kill and the Twitch wasn't even able to do very much. Honestly, I'd take that trade for utility. That's fine.
Yeah, and the fact is that they can't really breach into like top floors effectively because again, while Lecky's here in archives, the wall just behind him, the radio wall, is reinforced and it has a bandit charge on it. The only way you can get rid of it is through a nade, or you can just run right on in and just kill him behind a soft wall that wasn't reinforced this time. So now while Lecky's dead, archives is like completely open, but you still have the long angles to hold here from lockers.
Problem is everyone's dying both on site and upstairs. Adept has to hold on for as long as he can inside armory, maybe get one frag before he gets taken down, but the problem is now Scary's also been killed, and the Deimos is still alive with another charge that might just come into effect, but it doesn't need to. Frozen walks right in and finds that frag. So as soon as the Freezer lose their first player, what's the strategy? Go in and kill everybody.
Man, that round was very interesting because the underagers kind of went for like a completely different setup. It was the same idea, but they left one of the walls off when previously they left that wall completely closed off. And I mean, it probably wouldn't have mattered. The Freezer did have ace, so they probably could have just opened it anyways. But while Lecky was just not able to be as effective in the archives position as he was in a round previous, he just got shut down because the Freezer didn't give him 1v1 opportunities like they did last time. They just completely collapsed on him. And while Lecky in that position, even in a round previous where he got a 3K, never really had help anyways. So it was really easy to do so without the radio wall needing to be open. So a very solid start for the Freezer, a 4-2 half on the attack. That is to be expected of Border. And now it's time to watch the underagers on their attacking half.
It's time for Freezer to open up angle after angle. Not just a Rooney, but also making sure that Mira's got sightlines for days while they worry about rearranging the maze that is Border. But they've also got Echo up, so 2 anchors in play, trying to stall for as much time as they possibly can. So it's both the Yokai and the Nitro Cell that might be win conditions for in the event that underagers were to get a plant down. But the question comes from where? The sightlines are open all the way from archives. I mean, you can probably look all the way to the window that Lecky's firing through directly from that spot, given how much of the walls that they've destroyed so far. So underagers are going to have a lot more things to watch in general, and they've brought the only pseudo-intel op that you could really use in a case like this is just the Twitch. So maybe they brought almost nothing on intel because they figured Freezer probably weren't going to play offside positions like crazy, but I say that and Rooney will pop up from office, take down Lecky immediately. So suddenly underagers have a real issue on their hands here.
The mirror window being present here on the coffin wall, you wouldn't really expect somebody to make the play over by triple wall because that's where you hold triple wall from. So it's not a surprise that why Lecky got caught off guard there, but they didn't really re-drone it, nor did they have a drone on top east or in offices to really spot that aggression out. So that's an easy first kill. While Lecky goes down, and while Valkyrie is banned, you still have the Echo drones here that the IQ could be quite useful for. So you still have plant denial on the board that the IQ could have countered. Now that that's gone, the Underagers are stalling.
Freezer have so many different ways that they can win this round, and for Underagers, they need to move in a lot faster than they are. 2 players are in the building, 2 of them aren't, but Adept is not able to do much from the outside angle. Instead, Kaysen will just move in and find Ark immediately, and there's another frag back as he just comes, I don't even know what Frost was looking at, trying to make it to the rotate to help out, but looks at the wrong angle. So Kaysen opens up with 2 big ones. Narrator's just sitting back, waiting for another opportunity. If anyone else from Freezer rotates and Scary takes down Zez, it's looking a lot better now. Freezer might have miscalculated about how they want to play on this rotation. Ooh, Raki doesn't though. He'll knock out Scary. There's still a minute left, so we'll see whether Underagers can respond here.
And they just lost their offices player, so I wonder how they're going to retake this at this point, because that was the player that was just kind of like holding that space down just in case the Underagers wanted to execute over by Archives. Zamira is still in the middle of sight with the Nitro Cell, and Frozen is in support and lockers. This is going to be a really tough execute for Underagers.
Still in a lull. Dep's already come back to top metal. But Raki and Frozen are not looking at the same 2 angles, and again, the Nitro Cell and the Yokai, the 2 things that we spotted from the beginning of the round, might still be the winner. But with only 20 seconds left, Underagers need to figure out what their play is, and they've decided it's Office and Fountainside. But no one's making their move from metal quite yet. When Adapt moves, that's when Raki's about to. They keep looking at each other from that angle. Here's the Nitro, come back out, he gets shot though. So Soapy just sticks that sucker, and now you have to worry about swinging into ACOGs, and that's a big problem. Frozen tries to make his move, and he gets shut down, and Kaysen ends with a 3K. Underagers played that one perfectly, and all they had to do was shoot the Nitro Cell.
Hassan is goated, bro. He just like, look, he walked into break room, got a kill on the player in box, then got the kill into the 90 player who was trying to rotate to box, and shot the Nitro Cell to confirm a post plant for the Underagers. Like I said, that was going to be a really difficult execute just because you still had the Nitro Cells. I have no idea where the Echo drones were. He couldn't get on the Echo drones actually now that I'm fully thinking about it, because there was a player pushing in through top metal. So he has to keep his gun up, and it's all really dependent on that one Nitro Cell to destroy the opportunity for the Underagers to get a plant off in Archives. Hasten shot that, or Kassan shot that. The Underagers now have a post plant, and the Freezer have 2 people who are just pinned down and can't rotate because they're going to get cut off from it, and they did.
Freezer also tried sightline after sightline, and the only problem with that is they didn't have people watching it consistently all the time. If you're going to open up sightlines and then also decide you want to lurk back away from them, or positions that you want to retreat from, then those then become sightlines that Underagers themselves can use to pinpoint somebody on a long angle, and they can get a kill from it in their stead. And that's what Kaysen was able to take advantage of, because he walks into break and just uses the way that the Freezer have rearranged the walls to his advantage and finds 2 picks. And it means Freezer are caught in a real bind, because then they can't protect the Mira or the Echo long enough to stall that plant. So transition into round 8. A little bit more on intel. They didn't even have to worry about it. Again, the only thing that they had was a Twitch last round, and that was just used mostly as a Mira counter. And now they've got a Dokubi, so we'll see how much more dangerous they can be with both a Dokubi and 2 dedicated flank watch operators on what looks like a pretty roam-heavy setup from Freezer, at least right now.
And it doesn't really seem like, apart from Raki, there's really this top floor hold doesn't really seem to be like that strong from the Freezer. So Underagers kind of have like a really top floor setup to go for, and full vertical operators that can help them in retaining vertical control and creating opportunities for them up top. So yeah, it doesn't really seem like there's anybody up here at this point. They've all vacated.
Everyone from Freezer's all over the place. Everyone from Underagers is trying to figure out where they're at. So the question becomes, who kills who first off-site, and do Underagers want to try and force the issue on site? But ultimately, Raki's come back. Looks like most of the Freezer, even with that initial roam game, are just trying to stall Underagers for a little bit of time. Kaysen opens up. Raki's been downed. Again, Vigil has been doing practically nothing so far on both sides through border. But even the vertical angles now, you're literally seeing him shoot through the floorboards. There we go. Scary had the angle on Frozen. Frozen did not know what he was meant to be looking at. That's 3 straight frags for Underagers, and now Freezer have to hope that they've stalled for enough time.
You really go for any type of execute that you want, just as long as you know where the last 2 players are. If you breach into offices, you have no shield to kind of like initiate that, so it's more than likely that like you could drop down into bathroom, for example, because Valeno is really in no position to like deny it. So it looks like they are going to go for a courtyard execute, but I don't know if this is a play.
Bell's got the long angle, even with a Vector. He shoots the cam instead and doesn't look for the Nomad. So now Arc, he's got 11. He's going to need 4 more and an ace to close this out. Frag will force him into a bad spot, and he either goes for the track stingers or goes for the window, and instead his head hits the wall. So Underagers now have tied us up, and both attack rounds have been huge multi-kill slides at the beginning of a round.
Now that the Underagers are on the attack, it's their turn to wreak havoc. It doesn't really seem like now it's 2 rounds in a row actually, so the Freezer haven't really, apart from like the first defensive round, haven't really made a dent into the Underagers on this attacking half. It's just been smooth sailing like I kind of expected, because like I said, Border is an attacker sided map. It is really hard to defend on it. I expected it to be a little bit more competitive once the second half hit, and it has been. So I'm happy that the Underagers are back into this game, because now it means that the Freezer just can't like run over them like how they were doing a numerous amount of times on those attacking rounds. Now it's Kaysen's turn to like start fragging out, and he's been so effective in getting these entry kills and getting these really impactful kills that has allowed Underagers to like get crucial space inside of the map to execute properly.
Most of Freezer's losses have been 1 round that totally slips away from them on man count. Like the first one was a flawless when Lackey gets that 4K upstairs. Or sorry, Lackey gets that 4K.
Yeah.
And then suddenly the first 2 rounds on attack, I think Freezer have gotten maybe 3 combined kills, if maybe only 2 so far through these first 2. Underagers can take a man advantage and then move in very quickly, and they'll swarm. And Freezer doesn't have a counter for that kind of thing, so they need, I mean, it might even be 100% conversion round on just opening picks so far for the whole map at this point. It's been a big catalyst, and for Freezer, they've let 1 kill slip, and then another one will go untraded, and it turns into a 5v3 or worse so far. So that's the trend they need to turn around most right now.
Seems like it's the same idea for the top floor hold, though this isn't a top floor bomb site. They're just opening up a lot of like long angles around the second floor to make it very uncomfortable to take the map for the Underagers, but I don't think they'd care. They'd welcome the opportunity to take more gunfights. It's just, it looks like it's taking them a bit of time to initiate it in the first place, but I wouldn't worry too much. They've already set off a Selma. I'm assuming that's over by the triple wall. So it looks like they're now really focusing on the fountain's hold.
Shots coming through triple from both teams. Only Scary's taking a little bit of damage. Freezer trying to hold on for as long as they can, but drones are not finding the mute jammers. They're working around them and getting as much intel as they can, which is going to be a problem that Underagers have to sort through. It's a castle and an Aruni at the same time means that suddenly Border looks way different. Sights and castle barricades combined, but Scary will grab Raki to start things off, and suddenly the Freezer don't have, I mean, there's still 2 players upstairs, maybe even 3, but it's not so much a roam. They might be caught in positions where they can't retreat anymore. Kaysen finds Vel, and Frozen does get him back, so the trade is immediate. But Underagers still have a lot more defense that they have to chew through, and they're doing a pretty darn good job of it. Freezer just keep on losing bodies. Not even enough time to transition. They got stuck in places where they literally weren't able to fall back to sight. Scary whips out the pistol, and Underagers have their first lead of the series.
Like you mentioned, yeah, they couldn't really retreat. If you notice the position for Scary, for example, all the way deep into Archive, or next to the Archives window over by Concrete, Valeno was in Metal Hall the whole entire time, and he was stuck between that Concrete player and a player in Break Room, which was the Flores. So he couldn't get out no matter what he tried to do, and the players, like on the top floor, is either try it and retreat through the hatch, which they have the Archives wall open, so that's going to be, well, yeah, they have the Archives wall open, so that's going to be pretty difficult to do, to like try and rotate down the hatch, and plus you'd give up like top floor control and leave players up there to dive, furthering lowering your man count and giving the man advantage over to the Underagers. And it's no surprise that the Freezer take a tactical timeout here.
Yeah, they look stuck. I think
Yeah.
it's different reasons to lose the round every time for the most part, but the fact that they're still allowing underagers to get a huge man count slide at the beginning of a round, even if they grab opening pick. Now they had an opportunity to really swing things back after the first frag, and then Scary decides, nah, I'm going to take Archives control, look into Armory, find basically 2 picks. Kaysen's going to keep on doing Kaysen things. So even if there's a decent strategy for the Freezer, underagers on border have been moving so quickly, and Freezer don't have the ability to counter the frags as they happen. That's the whole basis for this entire second half. You want to find a more strategical reason? It's just underagers pushing, even if with minimal intel, and flank watch, passive flank watch, so that they're not worried about someone having to physically watch the angle themselves. That's why Freezer's losing so far, and it's something that they need to find a counter for quickly.
Yeah, another thing I've noticed as well is how, like you said, their underagers are moving very quickly. They're getting a lot of map control in the process, and into like really important parts too. So if you're wondering why the underagers are looking stuck, or sorry, not the underagers, but rather the Freezer, why they're looking stuck, it's because the underagers are putting themselves in really good positions early on, and the Freezer needs to find a way to stop that, stop losing map control so early to the point where when it's time for them to move back to site or retreat, they can do so, because otherwise they can't retreat because players are already in good positions to cut them off anyways.
Still not lost, though. Though if Freezer wants to win this thing before overtime, and this sucker is going to require all 12, they're going to need to hold fast and find an opening pick and maybe even get hyper aggro the way that underagers themselves were. He's got the idea, but he doesn't ultimately come out of break, because trying to find the kill for the player that's on box all the way back outside that window is a really hard challenge, and you don't want to expose yourself. But there's another first opening frag. Arc will grab Adept, immediately scamper back to security, and they haven't taken CCTV yet, so this is all still free space for them to use. Vector right around the angle. Oh, he does down Lecky. And there's nothing that he can do about it, and there's no cover to try and get the restore. Somehow Valeno, oh, did he get air jabbed? I think he did. He was stuck, and Kaysen takes advantage of him being super out of sorts. But underagers still, oh no, you're still exposing yourself to bad angles. Kaysen will grab 2, and any advantage the Freezer might have had might be gone already.
And honestly, they just didn't really need to go for the aggressive plays. I can understand, like, Goyo doing it because, like, you're playing between the break room door, or not break room, the security door all the way to the balcony, and you kind of need to be a bit mobile in that position, but I don't know why the Frost is running out when you have a Goyo on the break room door. That's kind of goofy. Now you've given up security and break room control, and I mean, that's really all the underagers kind of get. They get no control over by offices. There's a player still by fountains, so they could probably do something about this push, but I think the wall is reinforced behind them apart from a rotate. So you do have a way to kind of like stall this out a little bit if you time it correctly.
Freezer backs off closer to site, giving up CC even though they held it for 2 minutes. With a minute to go, it's all about how underagers decide they want to play this. Raki will hold on to Fountain, and they've still got office control, so they can still peer into CC in the event anyone wants to give them a fight. Scary decides, I'll take that bet, and wins it against Raki. And now Soapy can also continue pressured from the balcony side, but he and Scary will be isolated on 2 different sides of the map. It's going to force Zeds and Frozen to look in 2 different directions. But based on how this execute works, Frozen headshot moves back around. Soapy doesn't know in what direction he's meant to look, and Frozen will just claim 2 headshots and say, yep, thank you, that's mine. This time they don't lose the early advantage, and they convert. We're on break point now.
2 clean, 1, well, not 1 tap, but like still nice headshots after he was getting 2 individual 1v1 gunfights. But yeah, almost a lost round for the Freezer after giving up the break room control. It's good that they were still able to hold control of offices and Fountain, because that allowed them to really stall out the rest of the push for the underagers, who were very limited in what they could take at that point. They couldn't really retake into offices or retake into security at that point and then make a rotate to offices because you still have a bunch of utility to clear. Overall, the push was one-dimensional. They only really worked one side of the map, and because of the heavy man loss that they lost at the beginning, 2 people down already at that point, they couldn't really like use any resources to rotate to the opposite side of the map to deal with mirror windows and a fully reinforced wall over by archives to like break inside of that side of the map. So it was kind of obvious what they were going for. The Freezer were well prepared for it in the late rounds, despite the hiccups.
Still felt like a round that could have slipped super
Yeah.
quickly. So for Freezer, a good response in the middle of everything going crazy in the mid round is it's fantastic. But the question is, how do you build on that? So it was 2 very quick opening picks, after which they decided that they could get aggressive as probably a response to the fact that Underagers were going to get aggro themselves. But for Freezer, that was where things looked like they were about to lose everything that they had built up over those first 2 So my question is more, where do they decide that that's enough that's enough aggression? Apparently Frozen doesn't care. He thinks the answer is add even more of it to our formula and hope that it makes a good cocktail. So he'll work his way back up, maybe looking for a pick. Nothing's open to him. He'll just rotate back upstairs. Now, I'm not sure if Freezer want to keep this going for the whole round, but at least for right now, it shows that they're willing to kind of do whatever they need to against how fast Underagers move.
Yeah, they need to be this aggressive because of how fast Underagers are moving into the map and taking map control. Because, like, if you let them just... It's just a border thing, I feel like. If you let them get into the map quickly enough and take places like Break or Offices or Archives, then you can't move anywhere. So they need to be aggressive to allow themselves to be as fluid as possible around the map. Otherwise, if they move in like they're moving in now, the Underagers, the Freezer have nowhere to go.
Man, that's a problem.
Yeah,
Lecky kills Adept and then dies, and suddenly Underagers are really in a hole. Adept tried using both Doke calls and it got absolutely nothing. Maybe a little positional data, but not enough to net a frag. So now Soapy and Kaysen, Scary Cross Map, are all going to have to look for fights basically by themselves without much more utility pressure, and just hoping that someone on Freezer decides that they want to get aggro the way that they did in the last round. Scary just goes right into small, doesn't find anything, and Soapy tried holding Kaysen's cross. They were working together, and now it's just Kaysen. 12 kills is not bad so far. Again, first map that he's played at a tier 3 level on PC. But does he have an ace in him with a minute left? We've seen miracles before. This would be a phenomenal way to make your debut. He'll grab Frozen. He was on 2 HP already, so it's just breathing on him.
Yeah.
How many more angles can you find? Everyone's in front of him or to the sides. They're all holding fast. They're looking down hatchways, and instead it's Raki. SMG-12 is just better, and now Underagers take a timeout because the Freezer are on match point.
Yep. And I like how the Freezer have like readjusted after they take the timeout, because they've been playing more aggressive and for map control. And it's caused the Underagers to stall out a little bit because they can't take map control for free. They actually have to work for the picks. And so I imagine that, like, now the call here is probably to just calm down a little bit and, like, play a little bit closer together. Instead of just trying to, play slower and play closer together without trying to force ways in without using utility.
Think so. Adept had Doka B and then used both calls before we were even at a minute and a half.
Yeah.
And I think all they were doing was using it to, I mean, they were trying to force somebody out of a bad spot, which on border is perfectly sensical, and it does absolutely nothing because he's one of the first players to die. And there isn't enough continuous intel being used by Underagers to suss out the rest of those defensive positions, whether it's Freezer deliberately holding something, or they're lurking just off site, or they're roaming super far off site. Regardless of what the site itself is, intel has not been the thing that Underagers have used. They haven't needed it in spades because they've been able to win a couple rounds on attack doing nothing but fragging and just being better positionally and taking advantage of Freezer mistakes. But now Freezer on match point, I don't know if they get super aggressive here. They might play closer to their chest, decide that it's a lot more worth it to combat utility placed on site in the event of an Underagers execute. But this has been probably one of the least execute heavy borders I've seen in a minute, which is crazy because you typically don't see that many plants on this map comparative to the rest of the pool. But if Freezer decide that they want to play further back, Underagers need to have something else in their back pocket through operator selection to make sure that when it comes time to really hit site, they know where everybody is before they do it.
Yeah, and really, like you mentioned, information has been a really big deal. They haven't also been able to work around like these castle setups as effectively as I thought they could have. They brought Flores a numerous amount of times, and it just still seems like they can't like get around the castle setups to like nullify the aggression here for the Underagers. They haven't even brought Twitch for the Goyos when the Freezer has brought that out a couple of times to like further slow them down. So it just doesn't really seem like, yeah, information is a big deal, but also like they can't really get the utility to be effective in their favor neither.
They have been really good at making sure that they can get some of these initial positions in the building, though, and that's where Kaysen shines so far. It's been air jab positioning, it's been ensuring that even if it's just getting a small sliver like stairs control, that's still enough for Underagers to move in on, but it's just about getting a foothold, and for Freezer, they've been enabling them to get that foothold, which is fine, but as soon as Underagers are in the building, that's where they're about to start causing havoc. I'm not sure if Raki wants this swing. It doesn't even look like he's prepping for it necessarily. There comes, it's another time someone gets caught in an air jab through break door. They should know by now.
Yeah.
It's the second time that's happened. They should know that that's an inadvisable run out.
Kaysen has picked the Nomad every single time they've been on attack. It's like Shaiko being limited to like
It's
only
working,
one hyper. Dude, like, it's crazy how they go for that break room run out. There's no reason to really do it neither. Yeah, they're going east stairs, but you can't really see anything. Just jumping out of the break room door, just looking over east. But Underagers, they're getting the plant down. It's not working though because of Vert.
They were just trying to scamper in, get plant down, and leave. He had an opportunity to do it. Lecky and Adept both try to even the odds, but not before Arc is there to clean house. And now it's just Lecky. They're even our pings. His feet are exposed to the vertical. And there's not really much that Lecky can do. 2 kills to find. He still can win this one if Warden doesn't have the angle, but he does. Freezer almost let that one slip. Underagers had a real good second half, but the way that the Freezer opened in the first gives them just enough leverage, and they take map number 1.
Opening 2 rounds for the Underagers were really solid, like you mentioned, but once the Freezer took their time out to make some small adjustments themselves by playing a little bit more aggressive, not being afraid to take gunfights to retain map control and slow the Underagers down. And when the Underagers were forced to use utility and get more info to to try and make the Freezer work to retain their positions, they couldn't really do so effectively. So they fall on the attacking side of border just by 1 round to like put them into OT. So it was very close.
You also know the one time that we saw a rush strat, there's no shields, and almost nobody brought smokes at any point. So what's the one time we see a rush strat happen? The very last round, after Underagers call a timeout saying, hey, this might not be the perfect strategy, but we have a window. We can just rush in and try to get this thing down. And not accounting for the vertical is literally the thing you have to do almost every time you want to go for a take like that. So they gave it a try, didn't work out. Ultimately, timeouts for Freezer were infinitely more effective, and timeouts for Underagers so far, at least in tier 3, could be just a little bit more well spent. Hats off to Freezer for making sure that they won a map that still, through qualifiers and now through the finale, they have yet to lose on border, but now we're going to transition into a map that Underagers have not lost through the qualifiers, and they have a double-digit win streak on, so map 2 is going to be infinitely more interesting to me.
Yeah, I'm excited.
There continues to be one continuous issue for a little team called Underagers in the finale, and it's a team called the Freezer. There's only been 3 occasions where Underagers have lost a map at all in either qualifiers or the main competition, and it was against this team every single time. Even if the maps are a little bit different from the last time they played, the Freezer is kryptonite against Underagers. They've got some good ideas, but ultimately, it still looks like experience is winning out. And after one map down, 7-5 for the Freezer on Border, a map that they were super comfortable with. We'll see if Underagers have any sort of response as we transition further into the series.
We're going into Chalet this time around as well too, so it's a good map for the Underagers, but I don't know, because like it just seems like Freezer just have their number. They were consistently good on the attacking side in terms of like getting information and using utility properly. When it was the Underagers' turn to go into the attack, they did really good at getting map control quickly. But past that, the Freezer just like countered them after they took a timeout to like refresh and think about things for a little bit.
Underagers with this primary core, which is Soapy and Scary, Lecky, and then adding Kaysen on relatively, not too long ago. Yeah. A lot of these guys have played together for a considerable amount of time, but just with this core through the qualifiers for the finale, Underagers were 10-0 on Chalet. Now, some of those wins were against higher caliber teams, and Chalet seems like a map that's always going to be omnipresent within the NA sphere. Some of those were against teams that they didn't have any previous knowledge of how they were going to play on Chalet. Those games weren't streamed, or it might not have been against teams that were of higher quality. So 10-0 sounds great. You're trying to preserve it against a team that just played it against Space Cubes back on Wednesday, and the Freezer had some decent openings on both the first and second halves, and then got found out immediately. So not only are Underagers trying to make sure that they can keep their streak alive, if they're smart, they would have gone back to the XGS stream from just a couple days ago and figured out what the problem was from that previous map on Chalet that Freezer played. And again, the main reason it was a weird map, there was not a single shield ban on Chalet. So if we see the same thing, then we might end up watching deja vu from Wednesday. But if we do get shield bans, then it's going to be a little bit more interesting to see how Underagers want to move aggressively through map number 2.
Underagers have had some time to like reset themselves, like you mentioned, between maps to figure out what exactly went wrong on Border. They've also had some time to also VOD review the Freezer's game against Space Cubes, like you mentioned, so they might have been going over that, what went wrong and what went wrong on Border, just to combine the two and then figure out what can we do to make Chalet work, to make sure we win this map just as strongly as we've won it before in qualifier number 2. That'll be the question that's going to be answered here on Chalet, to see if they can actually bring us to a map 3, or if the Freezer can, well, not play labs and instead end it here on Chalet to get their first win in the XGS division for the finale.
Labs wouldn't be the worst thing in the world. Freezer played it one time qualifiers and won it. Underagers played it 3 times and only lost it once. But again, the only team that they've lost to at all so far is the Freezer, and they played Labs earlier in a best of 3 in the first qualifier. So if Underagers want to push it that far, it's going to be a bit of an uphill climb. Not that I don't have confidence that their Chalet... It's surely if you're 10-0 on Chalet, you have to be good on it. But if you have to win a second map in a series, and then you have to go and play a map that you've already played against the Freezer and it didn't work out last time. It's layers on layers for Underagers. Freezer really dodged a bullet by making sure that they won the first map, they won their pick, so that even if they were to go into Chalet and drop it, even if it's not by a wide margin, they've still got confidence that the way that they played Labs last time, only a couple weeks ago against this team, if they replicate the same formula, then they should be able to do it again.
The Freezer learned their lesson from the last time they played this map of Chalet against spaceships. They actually banned a shield, so Blackbeard has been banned, and the Blitz has been banned by the Underagers. That's completely fine on Chalet, but you still leave the Monty up. But from what I've noticed from neither one of these teams, even when Monty was left up last game, they didn't really use it. They didn't use it at all, actually. I say don't really. That implies that they played it. They did not play it a single time. So Monty's still left up. It is an option for either team if they want to play it, but I don't see anybody on either one of these teams that has played a Monty before effectively.
I think Freezer played it the one time that they were pushing down top east and looking to plant in tellers. That's the one time, but that was after they like opened the wall. They were already forcing the issue. So shield play hasn't been a thing. 1, because of the bans, and 2, Monty is just not the sort of thing that either one feel like they need to use, and Underagers don't pick it in for round 1, and they kind of don't need it because well, they're able to get kills without it. Arc falls, but Vel's got a quick trade again, looking for another one on the balcony, but he'll fall back away. He's still got cover from Frozen, and they're just looking to hold Library, at least with a mirror window. And we'll just see if that's the take Underagers want to use. But when you lose Ace, and you've still got a Thatcher on the board, you don't even have can openers up on secondary utility, you've got no hard breach left. So for Underagers, that's probably the single worst op you could have lost, because it means you're going to have to move through the rest of the map at a much slower pace now.
We've also lost Kaysen at this point, so like...
All right, man.
Yeah, the utility that you can use to take map control is no longer available. Now you've lost Thatcher, and now you've lost Sophie. So it's not even a case of you just losing specific operators. Now you're just losing buys at this point, and the Freezers are just completely shutting Underagers out in the very first round.
Anyone who's ever curious about what it's like casting, try doing it at a tier 3 level when everything falls apart when it's not supposed to, and tell me you know how this round was meant to go. God, it just doesn't work out. Underagers lose Ace, and it cascades from that point. Freezer have a really good opening, but it's only one round, and I don't think every round's gonna be like that. If it is, we're in for a hell of a day.
Yeah. Not really much to talk about when it comes to the opening round, because every kill just happened outside of the map. It's the Freezer just playing in the Underagers' face, and you know, we talked about at the very beginning of this game, when we were covering both teams and both rosters, both teams, especially the Underagers, because we saw it be showcased a bunch of times throughout qualifier number 2, both teams have really aggressive teams with a bunch of firepower in it. And so far, that's been showcased by the Freezers, been showcased numerous amounts of times by the Underagers. And we're going to get more rounds like that where the defense is just going to play in the face of the other team. Sometimes it can work, other times it will be punished by the attack. So it's not really an alarming start for the Underagers. It's something to be expected because the Freezer will continue to play aggressive on these defenses.
Freezer will put a couple bodies upstairs, do a little bit of rearranging, and get themselves a good fallback position to play from. They've also, I love the fact that the meta has changed to a point where people are now actually treating Boiler on Chalet Basement as if it's like Bunker or Blue trying to hold the elbow position on Oregon. Because I remember looking at the rework thinking, hey, that's a great position to play in. Why not just do that? And it's taken like 4 years of Chalet being in the map pool post rework for people to start playing it that way. So they're not going to have it totally closed off, and they also don't have a reinforcement in pocket for it. They're going to be playing Boiler with their life, and then also making sure that they can put a little bit of upstairs pressure up here. That's what Underagers are checking for. There isn't a mirror on the board, so Twitch is mostly in there to check if there's maybe something like Elo Mines up, maybe a Legion Mine. If you're able to get Twitch in position to take down a Kite Claw, fantastic. Ultimately, because the Freezer are playing like this, they might not give him a chance to. Here comes Arc, though. I think that ultimately, if you can find Arc or any part of this room, it's going to be a huge first part of it. Raki grabs one, Arc is found out though, and Raki gets cleared. So now Underagers have all the control that they need so that they can actually start hitting the staircases.
Oh, can they? Because they just lost the Thatcher. So, like, I wonder, like, what this actual site hit is going to look like, because neither one of the hard breachers has used, like, a Selma or an X-Kairos yet. I mean, they could probably, like, at this point, maybe get around, like, the boiler wall and open up the longing from Snowmobile. So it's not as dire, or not Snowmobile, but the big garage. So it's not as dire as I thought it would be. And that'll kind of like open up this wine cellar site.
Freezer have a Nitro still up, the ability to hold long angles, and they've got a Warden who can see through 4 flashes and 2 smokes. So of all the operators you still wanted to keep on site, this is the best possible combo. And Zez can also try to hold fast to walls for as long as possible, but Vel is upstairs. He wants one more kill. He's not so concerned about using the Warden for on-site pressure. He wants a frag coming down bottom west main, and he's going to take a long time to make sure he's not spotted until he gets there. Still more pressure. Tubarão is keeping that wall shut forever. And Underagers, it's just going to put them into even more of a position where Vel can make that flank work, but he doesn't. He dies on the backside. So now Frozen has to hope that long angles are enough, because even the Nitro is gone. But Underagers still have to make the push, and they haven't just yet. Kaysen's on top of the table, like he's inside. Yep, there is the finally getting the connector kill. And there's nothing Zez can do. He was just hoping somebody was going to move into his crosshairs, and no one has quite yet. 30 seconds. He can pop up and maybe get 1 or 2. But the way Underagers played up top, it looked good until it wasn't. And Underagers pick up just too many kills top floor for Freezer to be able to hold on.
Once you clear out Trophy and then proceed to clear out Diamond, get rid of the hatch presence that the Freezer does, or that the defense does have at that point. And when there's no hard breach now on either the boiler wall, because like it's really hard to put any type of denial on the boiler, on the elbow wall, the boiler wall, just because it can't be shot out just from the doorway. The only way they could really deny any sort of hard breach was with Tubarão, and that was soon to be dissipated, and then they opened up the long angles anyway. So once they just got that control on the top floor, like you mentioned, and then opened up the long angles, it was a pretty easy execute from there. Really, your only opposition was the blue player and the connector player, and they had a couple of nitro cells, which weren't really effective whatsoever. So really, it was just kind of like an easy coasting around for Underagers. They just did the basic things correctly, and they were able to execute really effectively because of that.
Not to post-mortem that round for too long, if Raki on Ella survives that trophy rotate, then he can be the one to make the rotate down bottom west main, rather than it be Vel, because Vel can then use Warden utility to make sure that he can see through the smokes and the flashbangs during the execute. It's just the small things. The things that you absolutely could, if you made one little micro adjustment, or if you got a little bit lucky on gunfights, then the round would have looked a lot different. Vel wants even more, and he'll die in trophy within the first 20 seconds, and there's even more pressure. Why in the hell is Arc peeking the window? All right, man.
Yeah, don't ask me. I'm gonna be honest with you. I don't know why. I don't know. Wait, okay. So Veleno was the Mira. Arc was, don't ask me, because usually the Kite is supposed to be playing on site, so that's kind of weird.
Logic kind of went out the window with when Mira's peeking. That's ill-advised. Kind of, when Cade is trying to do it, you're peeking a 417 back past a tree. You're not going to be able to find him, dude. The only place that Twitch is looking is at the window, too.
Yeah.
That's... All right, well, consider what they've still got left. Can still hold walls closed because Tubarão is up. If you're able to keep Frozen alive, you wasn't able to use the yokai on border, but you can't even... Now Cass is dead. Everything is falling apart here. You still have some win conditions if you're Freezer, but you need kills like yesterday in order to have a chance of turning this around.
Yesterday? That's crazy. And now Zez is dead too! Wow, this is awful for the Freezer. And now Plant's going down from Soapy. It doesn't need to be confirmed. A post plant doesn't need to happen to confirm the round. It's a 1v5. It's not going to happen anyways. and the Underagers walk around with their second round in a row, and they take the lead. They haven't had really much of an opportunity to take the lead before. So, yeah, just a pretty weird opening for the Freezer in that round. I don't know.
Look, Underagers are a fun team. They did nothing special in round 3. Nothing. Because when you kill 2 people off of one, not even a run out, they didn't even leave the building. They just peeked a window. So because I get that Underagers like to play aggro. So getting 1 kill off rip and falling back would be great, but sacrificing another guy to the same window is going to do nothing when the only conceivable place that 417 could be looking is at the same window he just got a kill from. Again, the little things. Spiral and turn into big things. Man. Oh man, T3 really never changes, does it?
No, not really. I mean, I would like to analyze that round, but I don't really want to, so
sure,
let's just move on to the next one.
Talk about the cool things in that round. Nothing was cool, though.
Everything was just very sad. I was sad. But, it's a new round. It doesn't really look like the Freezer are going to do anything kind of crazy this time around. They are going to do a top floor hold, which is pretty default for a dining room site, dining and kitchen site, and it's full, like, commitment to it as well. Both sides of the walls behind the half wall are reinforced, and that's going to delay a lot of time for the Underagers, because they don't really have a lot of utility counter it. They might not even be going for like an office push anyways. It may just be like through trophy, because there's such a heavy commitment to the top 4 roam. You really don't have that many players on site, and you have the Capital, which can use the smokes to like smoke the vert too.
Trying to pressure from below with the buck and garage. Might just end up coming straight up the staircase to try and help from that position, and they're able to pressure from top floor. Arc was a huge reason the Freezer were able to walk away with the border, and he's now 0-4. So Underagers are doing a good job of finding these initial isolations, and this was the big problem that Freezer were dealing with. Whether it was them getting aggressive, whether it was them playing passive, trying to be on the roam. If they lose man count in a huge slide, there's almost nothing they can do. Finally, Lecky he hits the floor. But Frozen, at this point, you're really looking for another equalizer. Vel finds it. So you've lost 2 really crucial parts of this attack, but ultimately it doesn't matter. Scary drops Case, puts it where he needs to, and there's just too much intel for Underagers that the Freezer are having to they're having to push through Lion scans at the same time as Grim. At the same time, they were trying to pressure Nomads. Lion's just holding crosses like no one's business. Kaysen's having himself a game, and we've hardly even talked about it. And Frozen, the only man to make some impact in the round, dies upstairs without so much as firing a bullet. I think we're seeing why Underagers like Chalet so much.
It was just like a really easy take into trophy as well. Again, not really much opposition there from the Freezer, and only really having one player like in sight, and only the nearest player to the Kaid was a player all the way in games, like not even really that close or even in the site next to him. So as soon as you like get the opening over by like the master window, it makes it so much easier to then just like run into trophy and run into dining. There is no vert holes prepped, for example, in master closet, so they can't really deny the plant from vertical anyways. Plus Underagers are already in good positions to stop them from establishing a vert just in case they try and go for some sort of denial of top. It's like they have Chalet figured out already. We already said they are a good Chalet team, but it just doesn't really seem like the Freezer are prepared for this map.
Freezer had a stronger, which one was it? The half that they had against Shubes was their attack half.
Yes.
So on defense, that was already a bit of an issue. They were able to keep things close by winning the first 2 defenses, and then things started to slide. But even just getting one more against Underagers in this case would be a huge boost for when they make that side swap, and they've got 2 opportunities to find it. So even if it's a big slide and Underagers it looks like everything is suddenly tilting in their direction with no recourse from Freezer, there's still 2 chances for them to find one more. And that's kind of all you need before you make this switch and then go on to a side where you were much stronger against a better team only a couple of days ago.
Such a shame too, because it just seems like the Freezer, they pick into like the Kaid and Two-Brow, and it hasn't really been like all that effective. This time around, it's gonna like deny them from getting open the dining hatch, but only for a little bit because the Twitch drone runs right on in, takes the Kaid claw out, the shots missed by the Two-Brow, and now you just get rid of some crucial utility. Open up the long eagles from free, plus open up the dining hatch too, and that can get rid of that pillar player that's playing in the back more towards connector. It's going to be delayed for a little bit of time just because of the Two-Brow canisters, but these can be easily dispatched up by the Twitch drones. Like, it's crazy! How is he getting away with that?
Twitch has been a huge factor, and there isn't even a mute to counter, and also Freezer aren't doing anything to shoot said Twitch drones, and this is the situation you find yourself in. But Freezer have consolidated resources downstairs except for one roamer up top who might just try for a drop from Mezzanine here in a sec. Looks like he has come down. I think... Hold on. Are they even aware that there's somebody in this position? I don't think Lecky has any idea he's got a silhouette to his left. He might have a free kill because he's also not looking in that direction, and he does finally get him from that spot. He gets fried back by Reki, but the problem is Adept has also found his own kill downstairs, and the Nitro is far too late to stop the Ace from getting the plant down. Soapy was in a good spot. He sticks it, and now it's all long angle city for Underagers as Freezer try to get impact up top. Scary's got the perfect crossfire, and Raki upstairs, he won't be able to do anything. Scary moves in, and he's got perfect top floor coverage. That's a perfect time for Underagers to just get Case down when Freezer were absolutely not looking in their direction.
Yeah, the Freezer wanted to try and take top floor first, so that's why the site looked really vacant. But you already had really good cover from Wilecki on the top floor and Scary in support of him. So once Wilecki goes down on the double doors in the fireplace, it's when Scary starts to activate and dining and kills the Ella. So now you've lost top floor control. That's been confirmed by the flanks being shut down, and you've allowed a post plant to happen. The Nitro Cell was way too far to be effective anyways against the Underagers. To stop that plant and stop the Freezers from getting it put into a post plant situation. So yeah, the Underagers it just seems like it's kind of like the same thing again. They're just getting away with a lot of different things. They're getting away with getting like free map control, and every time the Freezer just try to like, I don't know, like do something effective, the Underagers are already in a good position to cut them off, and they can't do anything.
Well, if you don't want to map 3, round 6 ends up being probably one of the most crucial points of the whole game for Freezer. I'm not sure at this level that a team is able to come back from a 5-1 deficit. The Frozen keeps on doing the jump out thing, and Vel at the same time both hop out, find nothing, come back in, and the only thing that they get for their troubles is Vel not having full HP anymore. So now, if you're Freezer, ooh, hold on. Things are suddenly becoming a little bit more viable. Vel off the window. He still hasn't left the building again, but he's back in library, and he does get caught. Dude, Scary had so much time to make the rappel come up, and Vel never even left that spot, and he's letting him know in all chat. So for him to grab one kill right off the opening, if Freezer had a man advantage and they're able to do anything with that opening pick, they immediately surrendered only a couple of seconds later.
You also get rid of some crucial utility here as well for the Underagers, nades and some flashes. And that'll be useful for like clearing out the Mez players, clearing out the player on blue stairs, for example. Frozen's in stalwart in his position. Art gets another one over by library. And now you're stuck fighting for your life, Soapy, but he still wins the gunfight anyways. Kaysen gets his one onto Raki below. And this was a man advantage at first for the Freezer, but now it's been turned into one for Underagers.
Hang on a second. Zez grabs Kaysen. Wasn't expecting him so far in that position on the bar. So now it's a 1v1, but it comes at a minute and a half left. Still defensive utility up for Freezer, but it wasn't put on site. The only thing they'd be able to use is defaults if they're even still up. Depends on what position Soapy wants to come through. He'll pick right through the rotate. He only saw his head for about 2 seconds, and he wins the 1v1. Underagers take a 5-1 lead, and that might be all she wrote for Chalet. We're not even on half 2 yet.
Like, what is going on? It looked like such a good advantage for the Freezer again. They retain top floor control. They get a lot of good isolated picks from the Underagers to get them in really good man advantages. Valeno gets the opening pick over by library. There's a follow-up from Arc after Frozen almost gets 2 over by offices. And then like it just kind of like turns into like the Freezer giving up individual gunfights and losing them, and not confirming any kills to further their mana advantage and actually confirm a round. And then it ends up in a 2v1. That's very possible for either team to win at that point. It just so happens that Soapy's in a really good position, and he has the aim to make up for it too, to like completely flick on the mirror's head and win the round for Underagers. Like, these rounds come too close. I don't understand.
I saw a man advantage for Freezer for a second. I know I saw it. I know it wasn't a ghost. It was on my screen.
I saw it too,
and then it's gone. In a flash. We'll see what kind of response Freezer have on attack. Do they move as fast as Underagers do? Do they have a plan for Chalet? They didn't have to worry about playing it nearly as much in quals. In fact, they had a losing record on this map in quals. Or they were 1-1 on it, and then they played Shubes, and now they're 1-2. So for Underagers to have opened up this kind of advantage against the only team that they lost maps to during their run, it's got to be a good feeling, especially since it seems like Freezer might have engaged in a little bit of all chat tilting. I don't know. We'll see how much of an impact that actually has. Look at the drone work from Freezer. 2 guys up library stairs with multiple drones to make sure that they've got these first positions from Underagers discovered. And now they'll be able to work off of that. They've got all of library control. They're already working back to half wall. Breach is going to stay shut for just a little bit longer, but Buck is going to make Tubarow's life a living hell in office for a couple more seconds. And the only options that he's got to look at right now, if he wants to use the vert, he can, but down the balcony is going to be a little more interesting. And now Kaysen's the first one to drop, so you can't use the solos for anti-plant utility at this point. Freezer are making some really good time here, and they still haven't worried about most of this top floor pressure.
Yeah, vertical angles as well being established down below, like you mentioned. So the Tubarão is stuck in a really hard position to really do anything. And I think the wall got open too, so he just died because of that. Adepta as well to find one back all the way in from Piano to kill somebody up above. But you still have a bunch of players up above anyways for the Freezer over by Mezzanine. And they probably at this point got the dining room wall open, so they could just move into sight really realistically if they wanted to, because they have the control that they really need. But it looks like they just want to commit to a full top floor clear.
Got the kills they wanted both on top floor and bottom, but now they want to work over the vertical, and that's exactly what they do. Making great time through both players who still stuck up at about 2 minutes left. Scary now has a super tall task, but still has a nitro. But he's going to throw it shallow, and he'll still get found from the hatch anyway. Freezer just blitzed through that top floor. And there's also no counter for the Buck. He was trying to force the Tubarão into a really bad spot the whole round, and he finally does. So anything that we might have had to say about the way that Underagers were moving through Chalet, Freezer can still make some good time.
And that was like a pretty solid execute in the end from the Freezer, because like originally I thought some teams usually when they get offices wide open and they remove the vert players, they remove the piano player as well, then you have really no vert to play for to deny the plant. So sometimes the teams usually just execute into dining, but I like the fact that the Freezer committed to a full top floor killer, because one, they had more information on the top floor, plus they had a man advantage over like only 2 people that were up there, besides the Legion from Underagers. So they just played into their main advantage on the top floor, plus the information they already had. It saves time because they don't have to re-drone into dining to figure out where the mirror is. And then once they get the 5v1 or the 4v1, they can work on finding out where the mirror is from the top floor angles, from clearing out the last player alive, and then confirm and execute. So like really nice job from the Freezer there to work it properly. And I just like their line of thinking.
Freezer bringing an attacking lineup that's good for... Oh my god, wait. Scary in the same position that Vel, I think, got a kill from a couple rounds ago, and now Vel's the one that's down to 2 HP. Something about Poetic Justice if that kill had actually worked, but not to be here. Anyway, Freezer have options for both early, mid, and late rounds on the execute. The only thing that they've brought for Breach for this site is can openers, and I'm not too concerned about not having dedicated Breach on this one, so that should be just fine. I'm getting one of our last looks at Old Jackal pre-rework on CJX in the pool now too. They'll just keep on spotting Kaysen for about 30 seconds, and Scary takes a little bit of damage, and he's not really fallen back off his spot quite yet. But Freezer, again, through the first minute, Library, Mez, and almost down to Piano control super, super quickly. And in this case, because the site's different, Underagers do just let them have it.
Yeah, only one player here, or actually 2 players on the top floor. 4 players, actually, so they're just playing for, like, time here at this point because they don't want to give the Freezer full top floor control and full vertical because the RAM is in play. Once you put this RAM into the mezzanine position, that eliminates positions like connector, that eliminates positions between the rotate, so you can't rotate into site. The only effective position you can play on the basement once vertical is established by the attackers is through blue hallway, which is not a very good position to play at all to deny a snowmobile execute, especially if it's on the metal bookcase.
Legion's going to rotate all the way back up. Same as the Vigil, so a 2-man roam game up top. If Freezer had the ability to drone for just a little bit longer, then they're going to know that site is almost about as open as it could have been. But here comes that 2-man game up top. Legion plus Vigil, they're looking for a Nomad. Even just one punch hole is going to be enough to spot out one player and maybe grab a free pick. There's still some shots through the wall before the impact comes in, but Lecky grabs Arc anyway and still gets the other player on the staircase. It's all beginning to fall apart, but Frozen and Reki do have an answer, but Lecky has not been countered so far. That 2-man game up top was pretty perfect. Frozen does eventually get the Legion, and we'll see if Soapy can hold on at 30 seconds to go. It was a great ploy to just cut down all of the reserves Freezer had. But now at 20 seconds, a Nitro for Soapy. He'll stick back and whine, knowing the only place they can feasibly plant with no breach is right down the staircase. They have to come, and Soapy lets them down. So now, is there adequate plant coverage? He looks at the wrong angle for a second, but then he does down the case. 7 seconds to go. Raki has to play the vertical and hope he finds Soapy. Soapy just has to stay alive for 2 seconds, and Raki is trapped on the top floor. And Underagers pushed to match point in the most unconventional way.
Oh my god! Where is the cover? Like, okay, because like realistically, he can't really, if like you have more players up on the vert there for the Freezer, he can't like cross into connector, but because there's only 2 players alive, you know the cover is probably on main stairs by this point, and the main stairs player doesn't really cut him off as soon as he rotates between Wine Cellar and the connector, which he's exposed to the rotate from Snowmobile. He's rotating for free, and he just gets the kill because where is the Ram looking? Where are you?
Dude, Lecky and Scaria were working like Murray and Jokic on the pick and roll. They were working so well in tandem off one another, and even if Scary died early, Lecky can get 2 kills through the impact hole, even after it looked like Freezer were firing through the wall. He'll get 2, rotate down, find a 3rd, and he's done so much work at that point. It's nuts how that kind of rotation, so many bodies off-site, and Freezer can't capitalize on it fast enough, and they just get hit from the back, even after I think they realized there's probably somebody in office. They were firing through the wall. So someone had to have some idea, and they still can't come away with a 2v1 advantage and someone trying to plant.
Crazy,
The Underagers,
like,
only one round off, and we go to labs, and all of a sudden this whole cycle starts over again.
that's crazy. Yeah, match point for Underagers. Defense is not really a strong suit for Chalet, but it's working out at least for them because it's a very good map for them, like we mentioned. Labs is just around the corner if the Underagers can win this map, and it's this time for the Freezer to start making combats. No mistakes to be made. You can't do that anymore, just like how you did in the last round. And so they're gonna start it off pretty solidly. It's a take from mezzanine, and they're gonna really focus and hone in on getting the office wall open so that they can free the half wall position and open up the top floor for free.
Initial map control again from Library. Been super fast at taking it, but that's been the case for the whole half so far. Still able to hold long angles though. Castle will be the first immediate problem. He's got Lecky for backup in the closet right next to him. And ultimately, I'm not sure if Freezer really have the utility or the faith that if they were to hit site direct right now without taking control of vertical, or at least getting one kill up top before trying to plant, that things would really work out. But they're going to work from two angles. They'll get the vertical from up top and send one player from library side to make sure that they can't grab a pick. But then Buck opens up holes directly below and then backs up. He wants to force even more prey. He doesn't want anybody back behind a desk or by rotate, but there's nobody in office, and it's taken them a long time to realize that the only angles that are being held are ones in master, and they still don't have a kill yet.
Yeah, the Freezer are doing a good job not overexposing themselves to the long angles on the top floor, but also working towards the site as well, because I did hear parts of the dining room hall getting open. My only concern is that you still have like utility on the map that I don't really think the Underagers has dealt with. Probably the mirror window in dining that's been shot out by the Ash of Arc because he doesn't have a breaching round, or he only has one breaching round left. Zez opens the round up though into Scary, and that's one of the site players actually. That's really the only site player they had.
Ah, man, the castle from that same spot. He stayed there for 2.5 minutes, and he finds the pick that he was looking for. Freezer might just not have enough time to make this execute work. Even if it's a 2v4, time was the big the first kill happened with over 2 minutes gone at that point. They're just trying to deny for as long as they can. Kaysen doesn't even have to engage. He'll just work back around. Somehow, Ace has gotten plant down. That's interesting. Retake situation for Underagers, but it looks like Vel and Zez are just not in spots where they can deny for very long. Say that, but Zez grabs a hatch kill from below. But how many angles is he about to get swarmed from? Just the only one that matters. Kaysen comes in, drops his ass, and Underagers have won Chalet. They are now 11-0 on this map over the past couple of weeks, and they force us to a map 3.
And when it mattered the most, the Underagers just kind of, not the Underagers, sorry, the Freezer actually just started to really slow themselves down for, I don't really understand why. I think at that point, you get the dining wall open, it's time for some movement to start happening, whether you're committing to a full top floor clear despite having the dining room wall open, or you're like you're trying to like initiate some sort of execute to force some utility being used by the Underagers. Either way, that last round left a lot to be desired. The whole map of Chalet left a lot to be desired, and it's a dominant win for the Underagers.
I'm never going to say a team didn't try. There were plenty of examples where Frozen and company looked like they had a plan that if they had moved a little bit faster, especially on attack, it would have worked out a bit better. It's just the way that they had rotates discovered over and over again on defense, or again, two guys on trophy window looking for the same player who they can't find. It's small things like that that lead to round after round getting lost in quick succession. It feels like a pretty classic how to lose Chalet game from Frozen and company, as much as they were some things that they were trying that looked like they might have had a leg to stand on. But again, there's a reason why Underagers like Chalet, and we saw exactly why for a good 20 minutes there.
Yeah, the defensive half is where they really did like take over too. Like it's like 4-2 in the favor of the Underagers, and no wait, it was 5-1.
5-1, yeah.
5-1 in favor of Underagers, and only one round gain on the attacking half for like the Freezer. When Chalet is supposed to be an attacker's side of the map, it just didn't really feel like that for the Freezer past their first round. So yeah, just a pretty disappointing one, and now we head on Labs. But this was the last map that before this meeting between the Freezer and the Underagers, this was the last map they played on, and the Freezer won on it.
Yep, again, Freezer are one of the only teams to take any maps off Underagers, so we'll see if Deja Vu from 2 weeks ago hits again, as Labs is the decider for both of these series. We'll find out after a quick break, so don't go anywhere. Last time we saw Freezer and Underagers play one another, it was an affair that went to map 3, and this is absolutely no exception, but Freezer have also not brought us here in the way that I thought we were going to see it. I figured Chalet would be a little bit more competitive than we saw, but Underagers ran away with a 5-1 half, and at this level of competition, 5-1 is just the kind of half that is not something that you can come back from at almost any point, regardless of who your opponents are. Underagers run away with Chalet, their double-digit win streak continues, and now we head to Labs, but I'm curious if Freezer's, like, if their Moxie's a little bit shot based on the way that they basically didn't play map 2.
Yeah, like, okay, defensive half, a little bit rough, but, like, the attacking half was really the biggest eye-opener for me because it seemed like the Freezer, compared to their border attacks, just went so much slower and they couldn't really get things activated. And the Underagers were just, like, even in situations where they should not have been winning, they were still winning rounds by individual prowess that the Freezers just let happen on Chalet. So hopefully Labs is a little bit better. They did beat the Underagers on this map in qualifier number 1 to bring them into the finale. So hopefully it's a lot more competitive for them in that case.
Yeah, the last series when they played in the qualifying matchup, it was in qualifier 1, it was a couple of weeks ago. Freezers and Underagers played, and the whole series up until Decider was much different. They played Bank and Lair in that first series. We saw Border and Chalet to start this one off, but Labs is still the constant common ground, and it was a 7-5 for the Freezer. They were this close to not qualifying through the first qual, and that game was what sent Underagers down to qualifier number 2. They only had one more shot to get into the finale, and they went on an undefeated streak. They didn't lose a single map through qualifier 2, but it was because the Freezer put them in that hole early, and it was only by a couple of rounds. They only lost 7-5. So we'll see if history repeats itself here, whether the Underagers are able to come in their first series in the finale and come out with a dub, or if the Freezer can get their first win after losing to Space Cubes just a couple of days ago. We'll see on Nighthaven Labs.
It's a good sign for the Freezer that they do start off on the defense. Of course, Labs is a really defender-sided map. complete opposite of Border and Chalet, which tend to lean more towards the attacking side. The Underagers didn't really have don't really have poor attacks. They're a pretty quickly moving team who can take space, map space really quickly. We saw that be the case on Border. They worked some really nice attacks over on Chalet. Now it's a little bit more difficult on Labs, but I think they can pull it off.
Do we see double shield bans? Blackbeard Blitz for the 3rd game in a row?
Yep.
Which honestly, I would love to see this Underager squad, for how aggressive they're being, play shields and then see how they operate with them, but a little bit of Monty play is going to have to suffice, which is honestly totally fine. Tubarão still remains the most banned operator on both attack and defense over the past several months at a pro level. It's just the sort of operator you do not want to leave up in any situation. And you had a couple options for the 2nd defense ban, but it's Valkyrie instead, so you're leaving a Zami on the board. Mira still had a lot of ban presence, but you're going with the Valkyrie, you're going with anti-intel. And if I'm honest, given the fact that Freezer were able to win Border, not worrying about a Valkyrie on Underagers, just not having very many options for intel on their own defensive sides to use, that gave Freezer just enough of an opening to go win on Border. And even if Labs is huge and plays considerably differently, that's just one more thing that Underagers are not going to have to worry about when they switch sides.
Zami not picked in the very first round from Freezer. Usually when teams pick into the 2nd floor and a Zami is left open, that's the first op you pick, just to retain Raptors control, but they decide that they don't need it. I mean, they also have the Mira in play. You highlighted the Mira. She's pretty effective on Nighthaven Labs for numerous reasons. If you don't have a Bandit at play or any type of hard breach now, she can be used to deny any sort of hard breach over by the IT wall. Yeah, you leave the mirror window open, so technically IT wall does get open, but you can't walk through it if the mirror window is there and if the tricking is done effectively by the mirror. So you have ways of like making this quite difficult without the Azami on the 2nd floor, but it's still surprising that the Freezer don't pick her in the very first round on this site.
The other surprising thing for me is Underagers only going single hard breach. No can openers on anybody else, so the only option you've got to open up, I mean, you need to get IT wall first and foremost, and if you don't get that, the problem is you're still leaving some other option soft. More than likely, if you want to use it on connector, then you can't use it on the external wall. Your options for using Selma's just kind of hop off a cliff, but we will see a little bit of shield play starting on round 1, probably to give Scary the coverage that he needs to make sure that IT wall itself can stay open. And Kaysen's opted for a buck, so he'll play below and try to force IT pressure off and really make sure that Raki doesn't have the ability to bandit trick on the wall for really any time at all. So here comes Kaysen. He'll move in. There is a vertical being played by the... Oh, there's the SMG! And I think IT Wall's probably going to stay shut a little bit longer. You've got a Thatcher on Lecky, though, so he can rotate in. I think no matter what happens, that wall will be coming down. It's just a matter of how long it takes and if Underagers decide they want to push from a different angle or not.
I wonder if they'll get it, like, opened, like, completely, though, because they only have, like, 2 Selmas online, and you can't just attack from IT or Raptors. You also have to attack from either Connector or Blue, and you're going to be met with another piece of opposition. That's kind of rough, Valeno. You lose Raptors control, and you lose your life. Now IT breach is open. I don't know about that either.
Vel's just not having a good day, I think, kind of all around.
Oh.
Tries a Swain, doesn't work. Nitro doesn't work, but Frozen does get the headshot and just reinforces Raptors. The pocket reinforcement is pretty darn perfect. Now you don't have any more Selmas. Nothing else can take down walls for Scary. So he'll just have to use his gun instead, and it does work. But Smoke is going to prevent Monty from moving through the hallway to initially force pressure onto Command. So they're going to have to push from a different angle, and that's exactly where Scary goes, back through the IT breach. But there's 2 defenders looking at it, and almost nobody looking still at where Monty is paired up, but the Smoke does get killed first. So now they've got a little bit more time. Freeze are going to have to split their angles between 2 different positions, but Underagers are not moving as fast as you'd think they would after that frag. Here comes Scary. He's got electric control. They've got it. Oh no, Arc exposes himself. Frozen's going to have to work through both a Monty and a Finka at the same time. Whips out the shotgun. There's just too many things for him to look at. If Adapt was a little closer, then maybe Frozen wins that round. But somehow, Underagers claim that one.
Yeah, once they lost the Smoke over by Server and he lost his gunfight to the IT player, that kind of just gave over really free real estate over near the server side of the map. Ace then jumps into the electrical window or E-box window. and then catches another player off guard from the freezer who don't really expect that he's gonna push at any moment from the backside, despite killing your teammate there. So it's kind of difficult because the Warden's trying to help out his teammate for the blue push over by CC. I completely understand that, but they also have to be worried about what's behind them, because that second floor really only has effective attacks work against it if you're attacking from different sides of the map.
That and Kaysen was Buck trying to play from below and force the freezer into bad spots. He dies first, and you don't even have the anti-vertical then to worry about, and freezer still lose the round. So imagine how much faster that could have been over if Zez doesn't use the vertical angle to kill the Buck before he starts opening up the floor. So now freezer are in, I'd say, a bit of a pickle immediately, because if you're going to lose defensive rounds on labs, you have to have a really good reason, or Underagers have to do something really, really special to overcome that hump. And not only do they win on attack in the first round, they do it without Buck. Not setting a great tone here if you're Frozen and company, so they'll need to have a good answer in round 2.
Yeah. It's also very surprising that they were able to still get the IT breach wall open, but Valeno kind of giving up rafters. That means that his teammates kind of have to vacate and give open the wall for free. And so IT breach gets open anyways. The Depth finds the opening kill. That happens onto Warden. I'm assuming that's the player who's either holding connector or top blue. Either way, the Warden is really good at holding power positions, and now you've kind of like lost one of the crucial anchors around this site. Plus, you're in a 5v4 in the top floor site where this site depends on crossfires to be effective for the defense. And now you have considerably less players to do that. Well, wow.
Raki had that toss dialed in. He hit it from beyond the arc. I think the only problem is not having Warden up. You've still got enough plant or potential plant utility from both Kaysen and Lecky, depending on when they want to make their moves. So Warden's still not a great op to lose, but that Nitro is a great way to open. Scary had 3 kills in the first round. Or sorry, Scary still opened in the first round, just enough to give them the space to move in. Now they got Raptors control back behind the Monty. Soapy is going to take all that control. Still one more reinforcement to use, but now they've gotten all the way to the hole in the wall, and I'm not sure. Wait, nope, he's decided he wants to go back to blue. So the option, you still have the ability to close off Raptors now because you've got the pocket reinforcement, and Soapy will just burn off the fear gas right here at 1 minute and 20 seconds to go. Underagers are making good time, but it still looks like Freezers have options on defense. Underagers haven't gotten so much control that they don't have an answer here.
Yeah, they haven't gotten IT as quickly. Raptors is still not in their control neither with the clash up, but she dies. She gets shot from the back. Valeno has the cover though, but in Freezer, they're just still losing bodies while Lecky over by IT finds 2, and they get the control that they want. Plus the Monty's forcing his way in now. It's a 1v3 for Zez, but he can't do anything, man. What is going on? It's the second round in a row for the Underagers.
I love how you said, oh, hey, they've still got Clash, and bye.
You just turned her back. I think she got shot in the back from my team.
That's on you. You had to say something. As soon as you do, dead.
I made a really good call. I was like, hey, look, they can't get into IT nor Raptors because the Clash is still here. But like, she's too exposed to blue. Like, I can't predict the future.
I don't know. I think you did, and you're just playing it down for dramatic effect. That's my take.
Yeah, I predict.
I'm doing a look back. So last time when they played this in map 3 of their previous series, Freezer had a 4-2 half, and they started defense first. Underagers have already made up the round difference they had from that first series, and the Freezer haven't won any rounds yet. We're on round 3, so unless Freezer have some really good options for what they want to do on defense here, Underagers might just be able to completely turn the tide on what this and the whole map might look like. We're not going to see Deja Vu. Underagers have already done the bare minimum for a defensive-sided map on attack anyway, but the fact that they've done it through 2 rounds so far, it's not looking good for Frozen and the squad that he's put together for this tournament.
It's also just like on the primary site as well. Like second floor is a really good site for defenders. It's very hard to break through just because of how much protection you have around the inside of the site to play around crossfires. So the Freezer haven't been able to do that effectively. They've been overexposing themselves to angles, giving up kills to the Underagers, losing bodies quickly so they can't play the crossfires or refrag effectively. And it's given the Underagers a really big boost in this round. Like, blue is so exposed to them, but now it's a way different site, a different setup, and a full roam that they have to clear, and they brought the Dokkaebi along to do it.
See how fast they make their way through both top and second floor. The one good thing about attacking top floor is you're not so worried about bottom pressure, but now you kind of have to split your attention between the two of them. Jason's back on Nomad. He was a demon on this on border, so we'll see if that manifests again on map 3. Dokkaebi has already used both calls, and there's no frag back. So again, seems like there's a bit of a problem utilizing intel, at least initially, for Underagers, to take advantage of someone on Freezer playing offsite before they either go downstairs or go back up top, and they keep lurking around. But Freezer, at least at this point, are doing a much better job of keeping all their bodies up, and at half the round still left up. Now Zez finds the scoreboard, and Lecky, all right, only one boogie drone I think was used so far, so for Freezer it's already looking considerably better.
Yep, that means less verticality to play with. They didn't even really make full vert above exosuit to make Valeno a little bit more uncomfortable in this position. Really, all he has to worry about now, and I say all he has to worry about is the Monty, quite literally, is the Monty going down like the Soda Machine Hall, because they haven't really made enough vert to fully support the Monty as he's trying to expose Valeno in the exosuit position. You still have a full top floor roam that you have not cleared yet. They were looking to do a half clear, and now I think they want to try and do it fully. Soapy does find a kill into Valeno. That's the exosuit player dead, and Raki looks the wrong way, and Kaysen drops him. So now
this is still...
Yeah.
I mean, look, the people up top, this is still kind of a problem. Freezer have still opted to keep so much of this utility upstairs, and the bodies are actually making things work out. But Arc still retains a little bit of vertical control, but it does put Frozen in a bit of an awkward spot. Underagers are going to have to really coordinate where they want to put this thing down, unless Adapt just wants to run straight in. He's got a decent spot to plant on, but again, Vertical's right above him, and the bullets are going to reflect that. There was some kind of ping. There was some intel on him. And now Ark's moved back downstairs. Frozen will maintain vertical, but Ark's got the kill on the horizontal peak. That works out so much better for Freezer, but it was all chaos leading up to that point.
Yeah, they still had a BP and tank, and like the Underagers never really interacted with the tank side of the map because they wanted to do an assembly execute, but they couldn't really do that effectively because they just lost way too many bodies, not only on the roam clear. They didn't really do a full roam clear anyways, but when they committed to it, they lost a lot of bodies. But they also didn't really clear exosuit effectively. They lost Monty, so that kind of eliminates the possibility of maybe you doing, I guess, a default plant. They didn't really want to do a default plant anyways because they thought the Underagers or they thought the Freezer would expect them to do so, and they would have gotten denied from the vertical angles in storage, for example. So they went for a completely different plant spot, not knowing that a BP was staring right at the Dokkaebi, who was trying to plant in front of the doorway in front of tanks. So yeah, information working really well for the Freezer in that round, but also the roam game being very effective in slowing down and finding some really good picks too.
Freezer will go back up to top floor, and the only reason I'm worried about this is just for the way that they lost this site both times in rounds 1 and 2. They had water pressure from the Monty, who was just forcing his way all the way up the hallway uncontested, and there was somebody behind him getting picks the whole time. And then as soon as IT gets open, someone on Underagers is just able to walk in and grab picks almost for free. So if we see the same thing happen the third time Freezer play up top, then Underagers probably don't have to change up too much from their formula, and Frozen is still opted to go back to the Clash, is still really hoping to deny for as long as possible from that angle. Ooh. Nitro tickles Kaysen. Does practically nothing. So now IT will absolutely come open for free. Raki hasn't opted to, or they've not opted to play a bandit this time around. They want the long angle because they know that Underagers are coming from all sides. So they just want a little bit more distance between them and the attackers. But at 2 minutes to go, again, as long as Freezer aren't losing bodies early, then they've still immediately got a better chance of winning.
Yeah, the weak spot for the Freezer has been just top blue being taken by the Monty and no utility being effective from the Freezer to really stop the top blue push, and it being and just allowing Underagers to sneak up Aqua Hall for free to get kills into the CC players. This time around they're playing a little bit more aggressively behind it. They also have the Clash over here, plus Melusi on the board, so this should be a lot harder for the Underagers to complete.
Yep, shield on shield crime, and Warden wants one free pick, but there's nobody back around there that he's within shotgun range to get. So he'll back away. But now I think he knows that the Warden can't play nearly as close, but he'll still do it anyway. He's going to play his life on this spot, looking for one more pick. Clash is still going to deny and feed intel, so they know that there's one back around the corner, but Monty's going to be relaying the same intel. It's all chaos just around blue, and we're not even looking at where the rest of the take might be coming from the Raptor side of the map. We're just waiting for this fight to be over, and Lecky still wins it. So much more control on blue side, but Frozen now opens up. He drops the shield, and now the entire take from that side of the map has been nullified. They've got a chance here.
And Lecky gets one onto the pillar player. There's another pillar player sitting here, Raki, but he's being pinned down. They don't have blue control nor connector, but Scary sneaks up blue anyway, so the pillar player is now left in a really tough position. Of course he is. He is in a 1v3, and he has he has IT to worry about, he has warehouse to worry about, and now he has his own site to worry about. It's no winning that. It's Underagers to take a third.
You know that Monty's going to be coming from blue. You know someone's going to be back there. So cool, you're going to put a Clash on that side and make sure that you've got someone next to the Clash to work over the pick of the player next to Monty. That's fine. You're playing a 2v2 like that is okay. Yeah. If you lose the 2v2, Frozen then plays hero, drops the shield on the staircase, gets 2 frags, and you're still not even able to use that. You still lose blue control, and then Raptors get swarmed, and then the last guy left alive on the defense is a Kaid behind pillar, and before anybody on Underagers even so much as peeks a head around the door, he dies into a swing. Freezer have now tried the same site 3 times in a row. Underagers are now overachieving for what Labs typically requires, especially winning the same site 3 times straight. So now Freezer, if they want an opportunity to win this series, it's got to be flawless on these last 2 halves for them to realistically have a chance. Underagers are just too quick right now.
Yeah, it seems like when the Freezer it feels like they kind of overcommitted to blue a little bit and left the warehouse and IT side a little bit naked. And that's like the worst part about that site for the defense is like you can't really overcommit to one side. You have to make sure that you're paying attention to every part of it. Just because if you let one part of it get exposed, then now everybody's cut off. And now you have to worry about blue or connector. And then you have somebody deep in IT who's like killing you. So that's kind of like what happened. That's what's been happening on CC. That's why there's been no convincing defensive rounds for the Freezer. It's because it feels like they're overcommitting to one side and not paying attention to the other. And now we're going to a different round. They're on a tertiary site. That's how bad this primary site has gone for them. They're on control room and storage, which is not easy to defend once you get this IT breach open.
Arc wants a free pick on the rappel. Upside down, almost gets it. We'll see how long Underagers are able to keep Ram alive, because only 1 boogie drone got used when they were trying to attack basement, and it showed because there was still absolutely no vertical pressure. So they'll want to hold on to that for as long as they can. Frozen's got electrical positions. I think the top floor bodies for Freezer are in decent spots right now, and Underagers haven't done enough to flush them out. Only damage they've done is because Arc has been peeking a doorway that you kind of have to take anyway. But Frozen will play around in server for as long as he can until he gets flushed out. Takes the fight. Oh, he's the only one to lose HP there. That's a weird engagement. So still trying to work over electrical. It's him and Arc top floor. Frozen finally falls. Does Arc have the refrag? He doesn't. Lecky gets both of them, but Raki will still grab Kaysen. So it's not completely all for naught, but it does mean that now Raki has to surrender the top floor because Underagers took it with almost no problems.
Yeah, they just completely like tag team everybody on the top floor. No blue control needed. And it looks like they're expecting a flank. Hopefully they put a drone over there and they have information on this, because it looked like Raki wanted to go for it, but now he's retreating back into cafeteria at this point. Bird control in favor of Underagers, who are going to take complete control of that. Yes, the buck is down, but you still have the Ram here who can wreak complete havoc on the verticality on this site and make it completely uninhabitable.
50 seconds. Kept Ram alive long enough to force Freezer to pick different shadows to sulk back into. Zez will keep waiting for a moment on this vertical, because Underagers haven't done anything to push onto site at the moment. Still waiting for their chance before all of them presumably just storm down one staircase and maybe try working over storage side. But there's still 30 seconds and they haven't made their move because no one from Freezer's really given them an opening. Legion just walks right into a crosshair and he'll get taken down. Or no, he won't. He's still up, but Zez has now been killed. The vertical being used from Lecky, and they're still trying to use the position. Soapy grabs the kill on Vel, who should have had that one for free. Raki still has another task that seems so impossible given the amount of space Underagers have taken. And this thing may already be over before Freezer have an opportunity to switch sides.
They're just slicing them up like Swiss cheese. There's like no opportunities for like the Freezer to get any type of opening in this round. Underagers are making it very difficult for the Freezer to exist anywhere. They try and do like a top floor hold that's very normal to do. There is no blue pressure from the Underagers, but between connector, electrical, and then IT, the players inside of server are very isolated and are put into really difficult gunfights that the Underagers just kind of like take together. They're not really separating from each other. They're playing off of each other quite well and playing close together, making it very hard for the Freezer to just be in positions that require them to win gunfights. So now this is kind of like your last opportunity. I mean, last round was your last opportunity to like make it possible because you have to move on to the attacks. The Underagers are overachieving on expectations on the attack by picking up 4 rounds on 3 of them, by the way, on the primary site, and now they're 4th on the tertiary one. So, not good.
Freezer have now such a steep slope to climb, it's basically going to be like trying to climb Everest with a bungee cord. It's the sort of thing that will take a miracle, but Underagers have shown that they're fallible. There are sometimes issues with the way that they defend sites, especially on border, that was... It just looked like Freezer were overwhelming them, especially in that first half, and then Underagers turned on the Jets, and they kind of haven't let up since that point. So, Freezer know their task. It's all about stalling for as long as they can. Vel finally gets an opener, and Adept continues to not do anything with the Dokubi. That's been a problem all series long so far. He even hits him with a question mark, and then tries to fall back, does Raki, but Kaysen's got a trade. That was with a shotgun? I totally thought that was... Oh, okay. So 2 people were firing on him at the same time, and Kaysen gets credit for the kill. All right, not too shabby. That's fine.
Kaysen was striking him the whole entire game, all the way in from lobby. He kind of knew he was there. Yeah, so he was already like in a really good position to cut him off anyways. In turn, you do lose another crucial information operator in the form of the Dokubi. So you're working with less information anyways. There's a Mazi on the board too, so that's probably trickling away at your drone economy, which at this point, Underagers with the minute and 40 only really have 5 drones left, and you still have a first 4 roam to clear too.
Buck just peeks the window and kills Vel, but he does get traded back. And Raki knows about it, but Ark is in really good position to clean both of them up from that one corner, and he'll slink back away after he's done his job. He does get caught on the same rotate though. Frozen's right back there to get Kaysen after the first kill. And it feels like everybody really just died in control room, hallway, or outside the window in the span of about 6 square feet. And Soapy now, wait for the boogie drone to drop hatch, even if he takes damage from it. He'll hop into Animus. You can find a free pick with a minute left, and he maybe can have an equalizer, and he does have Case. This isn't completely out of the question for Soapy. Freezer have shown that even if they have a man advantage, they haven't been able to hold on to it. But with 40 seconds left, Soapy has a little bit of intel, can get a teammate to call on that one drone by the staircase. And now he's back by tank. He'll try for diffuser, but as soon as that gets heard, that's when Freezer are about to move in. Now Soapy has a lot less space, and he does pull back off of it, but now Frozen's been downed, but the Nitro Cell is in perfect position. So Freezers save one. But again, if you're going to climb Everest with a bungee cord, it's still going to take a miracle.
Get your second round on the defense, but now you have to move over to the attack of Nighthaven Labs 2-4 down. So very difficult mountain to climb, just because, like we've mentioned, Nighthaven Labs is a very defender-sided map, and it's very hard to attack on, especially around the second floor, and especially around the basement site if the roam game is quite strong here. That's what Underagers pick into, is the basement site for their very first round in the defensive half. And with their operator lineup, I wouldn't really be too surprised if they're committing to a full roam, while also looking to deny information on the side of the Freezer, which we saw information be used by the Freezer quite effectively on the first map to really like isolate players such as Scary or such as Wilecki or such as Kaysen, who were participating on the roams by themselves.
Are we already at a point where we're going to start punching windows and trying to go for, I mean, I won't say no. I'd be down for it if Underagers want to win this. They're only 3 rounds away from claiming what would be Kaysen's first Tier 3 victory after swapping over from console. And even if this one particular map's not been his strong suit, he's had double digits on the other 2. It's been a good performance from Scary. Soapy was on shields most of that first attack run, so he hasn't had much reason to find the scoreboard. Lucky is... Look, it's suddenly a bunch of names you want to pay attention to. There's another one for Scary. He's almost at double digits. Frozen is absolutely tilted at this point. He's got to be. And even if now there's going to be more drone work. I mean, I said, hey, I'm fine with punching windows of seeing if you want to get kills on outside. I'm cool with it, and they do it immediately.
Yeah, I mean, him punching the window there was for an aggressive spawn peek, but it worked either way because he was able to hear somebody run towards the window, and he was more ready for that gunfight than Frozen was. So you take out 1/2 of the soft breach that the Freezer have left available to them and that they need for the roam, and that they need to, like, take verticality for the basement site in order to, like, put themselves in really good post-plant position. Well, Kaysen isn't really paying attention, nor does he really have support on that side of the map, nor information, so he gets smoked as well. And now you kind of leave 2 players here on a roam. Another player falls to a depth, dies, and Scary's all by himself on the first floor, but at least he makes it work by getting a kill back onto Valeno.
2 frags with the SMG-12. Still leaves Underagers some options up top. If they want to keep more of a roam off site up here, they can. Lucky and Scary have kind of backed up from these spots, though. Ark has now taken his former position. And the amount of vertical control that they can get is still big. Racky's still alive. Skeleton Key still got shot, so they'll probably still be able to work over that side, but not if Scary's up here. I'm not sure if Lecky's fallen back. Soapy definitely has. But Scary's about to be the win factor for the whole round. If he maintains this spot, he's still Vigil. He will evade drones. And the problem is now Freezer have to take map control and try to figure out where the site players are, that this is one of those things they're not going to be paying attention to nearly as heavily. Scary could win the whole round here.
He's still up here. He's wasting a lot of time. He could, if he times this correctly, he could, yeah, go for a flank up to the top floor. And I like this because that'll directly counter the player over by Storage that's making a lot of fuss with the vertical angles, and that's causing the repositions here from the Underagers. But he has vertical angles of his own to work with, so he can completely counter the buck here.
He might have to work closer to site, though. Being 2 floors above is a little bit too disjointed, and he finds Maverick for free. He's got no idea that he's on that side, and now Ark and Racky know there's someone up top, but they have to try and execute at the same time. They'll kill Lecky. They're about to do nothing but work over side pressure, but they still find the other frag, and now it's all on Scary's flank. He was upstairs the whole round. Can he find these last 2 kills? It'll be a 1v1 against Racky while Ark gets the plant down. Scary hasn't moved from Animus. Now's the time for him to go, but it might be just a little bit too late because Racky knew that he was looking in that direction. Scary was the win condition, but Freezer move in and find the 2 kills that they need directly on site, and that's how they win round 7.
Huge round for the last players alive for the Freezer, especially Racky, to isolate the Mira inside of the site, knowing that Valeno was stuck, actually, inside of Animus because of the Goyo canister that was blocking his doorway. He could not cross. He couldn't cross because the Goyo canister had been popped, and so that allowed them to isolate the Mira, move into assembly, and then plant on the ammo boxes. So really solid round from Racky to find like really 2 good picks, but then also recognizing, at least with the site players that they still had available, there was only 2 of them up, despite there being 3 players alive for Underagers.
Scary almost had it. That's 2 straight rounds now for Freezer, even after the side swap. I think for Underagers, it might be that Kaysen's kind of been a non-factor in this one. He was within double digits pretty quickly on maps 1 and 2, and for him to typically be first engagement, oftentimes first death so far on Nighthaven's been a bit of an issue. It's not like Underagers, I mean, they're still very firmly in the driver's seat. Even if it went from a 4-1 to a 4-3, you've got defense on Nighthaven. You've got a Freezer team that managed to win despite not having a drone game on a Vigil, which is to be expected. It's Vigil. Still managed to make it work, even if it looked like it was a bit of a last-minute push that probably shouldn't have worked against a lesser quality opponent, but they made it happen. So it's still an uphill climb for Freezer. Do some intel nullifying. Double hard breach to try and work over a first floor site is an interesting idea. And they're not doing it with anybody with super visible vertical control. There's no buck, there's no ram. You're... I almost said a word I'm probably not supposed to say on broadcast just to describe the fact that they're going to be going in raw on this, but we'll see how fast they're able to take site control even without that vertical play.
Yeah, I mean, vertical is probably already pre-set up in IT anyways. Usually that's set up by the defense, especially if you're expecting to hold top floor or retake IT just in case it's a storage execute. So they might not even need it at this point. It's really just about getting IT breach open just for this direct take into server and clearing the top floor player so that they can't use vertical against you once you do go for this execute.
See if he get one kill rafters, and Raki does. Soapy's caught mid-sprint, can't even get gun up before that point. Waiting for an opportunity. Kaysen dies and fired. No way. Ark is the one to do it. So in the middle of a Goyo canister getting popped, Zez looks back to Kaysen, finds the trade. It's looking pretty good for Freezer. Just clearing these positions out. All you've got left on defense is Adept up top. Still has positions on player in electrical. He will get frozen down to about 2 HP. And Raki gets downed off site, but now he's going to have to force himself out of a real bad spot, and he can't. Frozen will get revenge for that HP trade. Vel grabs Scary, and now Lecky, only one up top. Nobody was left back on site, and everything for the Freezer works out perfectly on a top floor clear. You don't even have to worry about site pressure that much. Just kill the guys who are upstairs, and it's all fine.
Yep. I mean, most of the defensive population was upstairs anyways. So, I mean, realistically, it was just like a really good trade game from the Freezer, especially considering like they had E-Box and they also had IT open in warehouse. So even though they did trade a couple of picks over to the Underagers, you still at least had the man count and the correct positionings in order to converge them to the players in CC and server, for example. And they also still had like other walls open too in order to make playing up top very uncomfortable for them as well. So it's 2 rounds in a row for the Freezer. We said it was going to be difficult for the attack, and it has been for the Freezer. To be fair, these rounds have been close, but they have been closing them out convincingly.
And again, I think it still goes back to the way that Border was played for Underagers. It was still the defenses that looked like they were more of a problem than they should have been. And ultimately, Chalet was over in a flash to a point where we didn't even get to see that become that much of a problem. But for the Freezer to get 3 straight rounds after it looked like Underagers were about to just drive away with this thing, no problem. They were going to get in the supercar and be down I-90 without anyone even knowing where they were. I'm not sure what sort of response on defense is really going to stop Freezer getting kill after kill after kill. Even if Underagers would have put somebody into a weird corner for a second, Freezer still look like they're fine retaking engagements that they've already been in the middle of. Like, Frozen shouldn't have had to worry about peeking electrical a second time after he'd already taken so much HP damage, and yet he still doesn't. They're confident enough that they can win these gunfights, especially through clears. And Underagers also have not given them the ability to go to top floor. They haven't picked it, and we're already on the 4th round of the defense.
Yeah, they've been picking into like basement, and they picked into a tertiary site. Scary finds the kill into the storage window, clearly expecting the play. But even though they opened up the vertical angle just below the bandit, nobody is here to like stop the storage player from playing here anymore. They have no control of this anymore, so the bandit is free to do whatever he wants onto the IT wall.
Racket grabs a free one. Adept is just not looking as... I mean, you're not supposed to be looking into a Grim Cloud anyway,
yeah.
But it's still a problem that Adept looks like if he's first engagement every time, it feels like he loses it almost every time.
I mean, now it seems like the Freezer does have control over by cargo side, and they have now top blue control, plus a player over by connector, and another one on the Raptors position. That's a nice shot from Raki, initializing or initiating any type of his entry into the top 4 using those Candelas, and he grabs 2 for no refrag from anybody on the Underagers side, apart from a couple of kills that makes this a 2v1. And Scary's the last player alive to try and, well, reorganize it for the Underagers to put them back into the lead.
Well, trying to win yet another 1v2 with an SMG-12 Weren't we just here? Didn't we just see this episode?
Mm-hmm.
Well, hold on to storage. Reki up top was pretty systematic in making sure that top floor clear went about as good as it did. But they're not so close. They're not going to be planning on storage side. They're going to wait for an opportunity to move in, and that's not going to be the spot where they're looking initially. But they do know that Scary is in storage, so now they've got options to plan on the other site. They'll just sit here, assuming someone's about to use vertical, but it's a Ying against a Warden. Zez will try to plant, and suddenly, Scary's got the perfect counter to Ying, who's got one Candela left. Absolutely winnable for Scary. He can make up for the last round where they tried this. Little bit of trade back. Still looking for his opportunity, but Raki pushes right in with the Thermite. They didn't even worry about the plant. Even if the Ying died, Thermite would have been there to clean right up. And suddenly, out of nowhere, Frozen and company have the lead again.
Looks like they call for, I'm not too sure if this is a tech pause. I think it is a tech pause. Okay, so you're just call for a pause. Not necessarily a tech timeout, but just a tech one. And I mean, this does take some momentum away from Frozen, Freezer, sorry, just because they've been on a 3-round winning streak, and the Underagers haven't, even if the rounds are like super duper close, and it seems like the Underagers are in a really good position to either clutch it out or win it, or it's like 50-50, it doesn't end up that way, or it doesn't feel like it's going to end up that way, because the Freezer just have it on lock most of the time, and they end up winning it out. So yeah, I think a pause here, whether it's technical or tactical, is a very good idea from the Underagers, just because it's a good way to pause momentum and give you time to breathe, because we're literally 1 round away from the Freezer getting on match point and beating them again in a best-of-3 series on Labs.
Yeah, remember, it was only a couple weeks ago. They met in the Decider. It was a map 3 situation, and it looked like, I mean, it's about as close as that game was. Even if Underagers ran away with most of the first half, now that the Freezer are beginning to come back, they only won that game by 7-5 scoreline. And it was with most of the same lineup. I think the only difference was Adept wasn't playing, but it's still practically the same situation. And Underagers, for as good as they've been through this series, for as hard as, for as lopsided the Chalet was, for as hard in the paint as they win, for as good as their rotates looked, it's not been the same story through now what has been a total slide in Freezer's favor. They were up 4-1. 4 rounds consecutively for Freezer have now put them in great position, but they're also having to do a ton of additional work. And it doesn't feel like Underagers are using, whether it's roams effectively or defensive utility, they're just not doing a good enough job stalling. And that's your entire job on defense. So again, being talented is something that a lot of guys in T3 and tons of guys in Tier 2 from a mechanical level, on a gun skill level, tons of guys have that. But if you're able to work over a map like Nighthaven on attack and make it work to your advantage, you were able to do that in your first half, but now it looks like Freezer are doing it just that little bit better. Everybody's got talent, but it comes down to who has brains that really makes this game shine.
Yeah, it kind of like mimics what Underagers' defensive half is mimicking what happened on the Freezer's defensive half too, where it just feels like no matter like what site they play, the attack is always just like one step ahead, whether it's like positionally or whether it's just them using something utility wise. Like, defense has not been as great as I was making it out to be, I'll be completely honest, on Labs for either one of these two teams. So it could just be right now we're experiencing an attacker side at Labs, but that really shouldn't be the case. It should be easier once you get onto defense.
Still not afraid to kill somebody outside the building at the outset of the round. Not a terrible mentality, but it's really only worked for Underagers once, and they didn't even win the round off the back of it. They tried, but it hasn't been enough to stop Freezer, and now they're solidly back on intel operators. Lion Dokubi, even if they can't immediately spot the Vigil, is about to make any roamer's life hell. And again, Kaysen is caught in a position where he might not be able to get away with this one. Everyone's like looking at windows. Does he have a retreat angle? I think he does, but it's a matter of how aggressive he decides he wants to be here. Like, he can also provide a little bit of help. Adapt is still up top, and Scary is just... Scary is really just wherever he feels like he wants to be at any given moment. But now Freezer have started to take a little bit of that top control. They've at least got servers. They practically have command because they've got a drone looking in that direction, and everyone feels like they're shifting back and forth pretty reliably at this stage. So Underagers haven't been able to do very much, but at least everybody is still alive, and that's going to matter a lot when we get to the execute here.
Yeah, to be fair, Death was also trying to, like, I think rotate through Lounge to go through maybe Soda, and he dies almost immediately. So now, I mean, besides, like, maybe through Vending, which is where Adept almost died anyways trying to leave, where is Kaysen supposed to cross in front of? Somebody's on the forklift window, so he can't, like, cross into cargo. It just feels like the Freezer are putting themselves in really good cutoff positions to stop Underagers from, like, escaping the roam like how you would normally want to. So they're trying to force the Underagers to fight them head on this roam game, which is not working out in the Underagers' favor.
Freezer have a ton of control. They know that there's got to be more of this pressure immediately above sight, and they're trying to find it, but they're just escaping. They're getting through some gaps. It's not enough for Lecky to get away, but it is enough for Kaysen to get out of a bad spot. So with a minute left, they are able to work over this vertical, but the question now for the Freezer is how much time is enough time for them to make this push?
Establish vertical, like you said, 50 seconds left. You still have Goyo canisters in use. You don't need the Goyo alive to be able to use those effectively. Scary does get a kill over by Cargos, but his position, or bottom Cargo, but his position is now known to the rest of Freezer, who have a main advantage. But it's 35 seconds left, and still Goyo canisters are around the site and a nitro cell in the back pocket of Soapy.
Scary's not going to scamper back up. Instead, he'll stick to sight. It'll be a matter of how much time they can waste with how many Goyo canisters are still up here. He's already moved into Exosuit. I think he might be able to find someone for free. He does. Bye-bye, Jackal. He'll rub that one in. Suddenly, you've got nothing back from the Exosuit side. Do Freezer have the ability to plant? Soapy will pop another Goyo canister, but they just walk right through it. Zez might fall to it, but it takes them down to just enough HP for the Vector to do its thing. The problem is it's all Soapy down in a 1v1, and Underagers win that thing? How in the world? Nobody was planting? What in the hell happened?
I would like to see a replay of that because I can't remember exactly who was holding the bomb. Actually, I think it was the player following up with the Lion from Animus. So he had the fuser, obviously because the Goyo canister got popped. They can't plant in a default plant spot in a safe place away from like the nitro cell. You can shoot the nitro cell from the Animus window, for example. So, oh yeah, he dropped it. So
Dang.
Lion dropped it when he died, and they didn't have enough time to kill the Mira. That's tough! Oh my god, that has to be like a mental block for the Freezer to get around. And the Underagers escape with one.
It's also one of those things that we just didn't see until it had already happened. We're like, wait, hang on. It's a 3v1 and they still lose? But Underagers get one. Even if it's crazy timing on an execute, it still means that they were able to stall up top just enough to confuse Freezer about what angle that they had to push from. Goyo canister gets popped at the right moment, so they do enough of a delay job upstairs to make things work out. Yeah. But it's still not the world's most reliable play. Freezer have effectively gotten top control and then worked picks. Like, it's been nothing on this attack half so far. That's been their bread and butter. I think Underagers have realized if we play a little bit more passive, we will have more opportunities later on in the round to win it. We don't have to win it at the outset because that's how they've won a lot of defenses before. But the initial play around windows, trying to go for an early pick within the first couple of seconds, it's not worked. Scary just kills Ark immediately. Not bad. Ark has been having a pretty good game. But that kind of advantage is not the thing that Underagers have been able to capitalize on so far. Freezer have been able to move through pretty quickly. So we'll see if they can do it again with some sealed coverage, given them intel.
Yeah, I mean, losing Thatcher on this site isn't really the most effective, especially when you consider Underagers lineup. There's no Bandit in play. Kaid is not present. Tubarao is banned too. So you can get the wall open for free anyways. That's just the body lost for the Freezer. And it's a body lost on the side of Underagers too. A death on Raptor's fall. That was really the only player playing around that position. But something that we didn't see defenses do a lot of the time is just close up the Raptors wall once they're not holding it anymore. So the Underagers do the smart thing. They don't play for Raptors or over-aggress and give up more picks. They just close it up. But you can always open this on the side of the attack. That was a nice
Whatever you open for the Freezer, it's about to be a double-edged sword. Yeah. Because those angles are about to work both ways, and it's really only 2 guns to 4. Frozen might be able to take blue side and start working over the hallway, but if he has to keep the shield up because Underagers keep looking down the hallway, then you only have 2 guns for Freezer to try and take advantage of the positions the Monty could force them into, and Soapy is downstairs who could come right up Rafters staircase and just shoot the Monty in the back if Frozen's not careful here. They've got time, but Vel needs to figure out if he wants to make this push sooner or if Frozen has enough time on his end to push from the opposite side of the map. So it's only Vel to work over Blue. He'll get caught in fear, and now he basically has to retreat, but only for a second. As soon as Kaysen pops over the shield, this is basically a free one, and Soapy also has an angle here. Just seeing who's about to get the frag. Vel's waiting for his opportunity. Soapy pops up over the staircase, and he'll grab them both as Frozen ADSs. And unless Zez has a miracle play, 4 kills in 30 seconds, Underagers are about to go to match point here.
No free picks given by the Underagers, and they may just close it this round out and put themselves on match point. It looked like the Freezer were poised to do that themselves, but they kind of stalled out a little bit. They couldn't take Blue effectively. The player bottom Blue dies, and 2 players top Blue died too, and you only have 1 player over by Warehouse applying pressure, and now he's the last one alive. Nice shot onto Soapy, but 10 seconds left to get the diffuser, which is on the other side of the map, and find 3 picks. And guess what? He's getting pre-fired, he's getting pushed, he thinks somebody's in IT, and there's nobody there! And he whips with the pistol. He doesn't die, but he at least adds 2 kills to his scoreboard. But what's that to a round loss and match point confirmed for the Underagers on the last map in this best of 3?
There was a moment where, because everyone's clustered in the hallway, that I almost figure if Zez just keeps holding mouse 1, maybe there's a chance he gets another one. Then if you were to kill the guy directly to the side of the breach hole, then if you kill the guy right around the corner with the pistol, if you actually confirm the Mira, maybe there's a chance Zez wins that one. So Underagers, a little bit of a spacing thing going on at the end. But they did not force match point last time they played in the Decider a couple weeks ago. They've done it here. They were already overachieving, and now they've won 2 straight on defense, which they probably should have done a couple of rounds ago, to be honest. But now it's match point. Freezer had a good thing going for those first couple of rounds, but it looks like at least they've been adapted to a little bit. And now the Freezer haven't been able to set the pace at the beginning of these attacks the way they were for the first half, or for the first half of the second half. That's not a good way to explain it, but you know what I mean.
That's alright. I also get tongue-tied too. Not tongue-tied. I don't think you got tongue-tied. It's alright. It happened. Well, I mean, Underagers finally kind of did it. Once we saw their attacking half, we were like, they probably should win labs by this point, but it's been no easy task to get to this point. They were on 4 for like 3 rounds, and now in that 4th one that they played in their defense, they've been able to confirm match points. So it's a little bit of a different energy now here for the Freezer. After that technical pause happened and the Underagers were kind of like allowed to mentally reset themselves. Seems like though they're going to be doing a pretty default take. Storage is the focus for an execute, and they are going to get the IT breach open, it seems.
Scary's also quietly had a 16 kill game, and he's still going to keep on doing stuff downstairs.
Yeah.
In a moment where he might even be able to pop back up here again. But Deimos will back away. Doesn't give him the same chance that he had a couple rounds ago. I wonder if they're going to be able to find the Warden with Deimos charges as soon as it comes back to recharge. He should have the opportunity. At least you should know he fired on him with an SMG-11, and you need to find that player above everything else right now. Like, we'll be able to assist. He also might be getting tracked down himself, so it might be a Lecky and Raki problem. They're both looking for one another. As far as the Freezer are concerned, just keep on doing the things that worked for you in the first part of your attack. Keep working over the top floor. Get these angles quickly. Don't concern yourself too much, but you've also brought the Deimos to make sure that that Warden does not get out of control.
Are going to get the connector breach open, so that's going to like considerably weaken how many positions you're allowed to play on the top floor, but it's not going to weaken the amount of kills that you can get. Scary gets his 17th of the game, and it happens to be on the only vert op that the Freezer have. Besides the breaching charges in the back pocket of Arc, you have nothing else to make vertical with. That's a nice kill though from Veleno to confirm from bottom garage. That's onto Soapy. That was the player holding Rafters. So you have something working for you.
Still plenty of bodies upstairs.
Yeah.
Underagers have done so much to just remain up top for as long as possible, and even if one kill happens cross map, they will have a trade, and they're going to keep man count even. Freezer have not done a good job of getting a man advantage and then holding on to it when they do. So as long as Underagers are able to delay for 45 seconds, then they're going to be just fine. Kaysen has a pre-placed. Not quite in position to use it yet. He's waiting for him to use it closer to the hatch drop. Actually, that breach charge might have even destroyed it too. The Freezer now do have a little bit more vert control. Underagers know that if they come back to site, they still have to play a little bit off site. Aside from Kaysen, he's in storage waiting for his opportunity. Everyone on the defense is just waiting. It's all up to Freezer to push the pace. Scary's got another one. It's all about what happens inside storage. They haven't dealt with any of these last couple defenders. There's 15 seconds left. Freezer got to move. Arc needs to get into position and Vel has to cover, but from what angle do you do it? Scary just takes him down anyway, and Underagers in Kaysen's first game in Tier 3 claim one over the Freezer, who themselves still have yet to find a win in the finale.
And it's a very solid series overall from Kaysen, who was quite effective in finding attacking rounds on border and being a big part of a reason as to why they were so successful on Chalet. But Scary is the one who tops the leaderboard in the final map of Labs, 20-9, or maybe even 21. I don't know. He still got like around that amount of kills, and he was insane the whole entire map in finding impactful kills for Freezer throughout, or for the Underagers throughout the whole of Labs, especially in the round that they went match point on the basement site, where he wasted enough time to allow Goyo Canister to be so effective that it knocked the Freezer off filter and lost in the round because they couldn't plant the diffuser in time. That was an insane map. That was an insane map.
You gotta win on defenses on Labs, but by default that has to happen, and Underagers ultimately do it, even if it took them a bit to suss it out. But for multiple maps across both series Freezer have played so far, if they can get out to an early advantage, they can get a wave of rounds on after a side swap or even at the beginning of a map, and then they will get adapted on. They won't change up enough, and then the team that they're playing against will just swarm at the right time. They will cascade rounds in their favor, and the Freezer had absolutely no answer. Even when they did open up attacks on Labs, super strong, they got their lead back. They were 2 rounds away. All Underagers had to do was clench up for 3 rounds of their own, make sure that they were using their rotates more effectively, and they did it exquisitely. Freezer, I think the problems for them are a little bit pronounced at this point. I think anybody might be able to see what their issues are. They should know after 2 straight series of losing off the back of there are some trends emerging at this point. But for Underagers to open up their campaign in the finale this way, that has to feel stellar.
Yeah, and it's a shame because I thought the Freezer had some nice attacks, especially on a border, and then moving on to Labs. They were suffocating Underagers at quite a bit of time. There were rounds where Scary was muted. There were rounds where Kaysen couldn't really do much of anything. While Lecky was the first kill in a bunch of rounds on Chalet too. And they still couldn't really confirm much of anything. A lot of times what really plagued them was either like the pacing or on their defenses especially. It just felt like they just gave up so much map control. And because you're on the fence, you give up a lot of map control, you really can't move anywhere. You're suffocated inside of sight. You get picked off easily. And that's exactly what happened on their defensive half on Labs. That ultimately is what costed them this game.
Well, Underagers get vengeance from the last time they played Freezer, and they do get the flip reverse. They lost Labs last time they played, and then the Decider gives them their first win in the finale. Though, general question for you, Chaka, given the other teams that Underagers are playing in their group, they played Freezer, who very clearly are struggling. They've got Soar, Core, Space Shubes, and Revelations all still left to play. Is there any possibility that they get past a couple more of those teams, or was beating Freezer what might be the weakest team in their group? Is that probably the one gimme that we could have given them before this started?
I think you still have to get through Space Shubes and Revelations. Like, Revelations are still like a very good team. Space Shubes are probably coming into this after the roster changes that Revelations had to make. Actually, if I can confirm that after this, Space Shubes probably look like the strongest group in this team. So after they play Space Shubes, and if they get like a convincing enough result, either a win or even just bring them all the way to 3 maps, or maybe even win it in 2, we'll see. Because I think you have 2 other teams in this group that can certainly contest them or even be better than them.
Well, congratulations to Underagers. I think that's probably one of the best starts you could have gotten. You proved that you were tenacious and you can stick with it, and you still have an 11-0 undefeated streak on Chalet. Meanwhile, for Freezer, commiserations. It's getting a lot harder to see how your path getting out of this division is going to go, but still plenty of opportunities, still lots of games to play, and your campaign is not quite done. But ultimately, that was just the warm-up. This was the opening match for what is ultimately going to be probably one of the more interesting games, but not because of who comes up in our next best of 3, but because of who's casting it. Shaka, thank you very much for doing this one with me. It was a lot of fun. We should do this one again at some point. But ultimately, you're not here for us. You're here for JJ Blastful and Klimp's casting series number 2. We'll be back after the break.